Alright.
Alright, here we go. Welcome everyone to Game 2 of the 2018 World Chess Championship, featuring the one and only Magnus Carlsen, currently the world champion, as well as still #1 rated player in the world.
By 4 points?
By 4 points. Who seeks to defend his title against Fabiano Caruana. This will be his third title defense. He's already successfully defended it against Anand. He successfully defended it against Karyakin. Now he's going to try to defend it against Fabiano Caruana.
Twice, I think.
Well, no, he beat him once, and then he defended it against him and Karyakin, and now this will be his attempt at defending it
for the third time.
For the third time. This time versus Fabiano Caruana. My name is Joseph Levine, and as you can see underneath the my name, I'm a Fide 1330 player, which is to say that I'm a certified patzer. Some of you guys think that you're patzers. I actually have a certification. I've spoken with 5 different grandmasters on the subject. They all agree that I'm a patzer, so there you go. But with me is the one and only Tal Baron, certified grandmaster, Fide rating 2532. And just like the actual lessons that we have, where Tal teaches me, I ask the questions and he gives the answers. That's how we're going to do this broadcast. That being said, there are already moves on the board. I see a d4, d5 opening, or, you know, I mean, it's a d4, d5 opening. Knight to c4, e6, knight to c3. And at this point, we're just waiting to see whether he'll play bishop to b4.
Or d takes c4, or c6. These are the
c6.
3 main moves, but actually, those are the 3 main moves that I like. The move that is by far the most popular in World Championship throughout history is bishop e7, and he did play it. That's considered to be a bulletproof opening.
Yeah.
And that's usually referred as the Queen's Gambit declined. And yesterday we spoke about the Rossolimo being an ocean. Well, I don't know how to call this opening.
If the Rossolimo is an ocean, then this is a vast expanse. This is a universe of its own. There are more games in the Queen's Gambit declined than any other queen pawn opening, by far.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for some reason I would have thought he would have played bishop b4, but we do have bishop e7 on the board. And let's start already. What are the fundamental goals of this opening?
Well, let's start from talking about this bishop. It has to be developed, followed by the king side castling, and the first question for white to answer is whether he will use the classical approach with e3 or g3. But notice that if he plays e3, this bishop will be locked behind the pawn chain. So usually what they do is they develop this bishop first somehow. So bishop g5, there's also bishop f4, followed by e3 and bishop e2. That's the, let's call it the classical system against the Queen's Gambit declined, and also the most popular one in top level nowadays and throughout history. G3 isn't considered to be the best, but Caruana actually played it twice with huge success in the recent months against, I believe, Georg Mayer and another strong player. But
I was going to say, Caruana is a former Catalan player, so having a Fianchetto bishop isn't going to be... Oh, Caruana. Oh, sorry. I reversed the colors. You see, this is why I'm 1300. this is exactly what happens.
Yeah, I'm just mentioning that Caruana played it in the past to show that even the lines that are considered harmless can be deadly with the right preparation and ideas in the, let's call it, in the right hands. And Carlsen cannot really invent something new on move 5, because I believe everything has been tried here, everything that makes sense. Some players even play g4 in this position, which I wouldn't recommend. Bishop f4, he goes for the classical approach, and now there are several ways to handle the this position, and I don't really know what's the main line, because I really dislike this opening for black. It's quite passive, but normally they go castles, e3, knight bd7, and then there is this move bishop e2. That's the main line.
Followed by castle's queenside, and then usually they develop the queen to the c2 square, right?
That highly depends on what black does. So let's give an example. I'll try not to make moves just in case Carlsen will make his own moves, so we can see. So
let's refresh the board actually, so we get the clock back on the board.
So there is no No, it's not this game. Game number 2. Okay.
Game number 2.
Yeah. I thought that, they agreed to a draw for a moment.
I don't see the
Bishop
clock
F4
again.
castles. Okay. I
All
think
right.
we'll be fine without the clock, even though some of our viewers
Are very desperate. We've already gotten one request for the clock.
Oh my god.
And we have
No.
greetings from my wife, and another Levine says hello.
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 Where is my future wife?
Yeah, where is she?
I thought she was here yesterday. Anyway, E3, C5, DC5. Oh, they're playing.
Okay, so
very
they're
quickly.
blasting out. They're blasting out a fairly well-known line, though. This is
Yeah.
hardly
Let's
a
consider
shock.
the main line.
But I would like to point out that I was correct yesterday when I said that I think Carlsen is going to open with D4. I would have been shocked to see him open with E4 and try to bump heads with Caruana in a Petrov that Caruana seems to understand better than just about anybody in the world. But yeah,
that's an interesting claim. I would argue that Kramnik and Gelfand and some Chinese players can
hold their own
challenge
in the Petrov.
challenge Caruana in the Petrov from the knowledge point of view. But yeah, I would say that D4 is a good choice by Carlsen, at least to see what Caruana has in stock for him. And now that he knows that Caruana wants to play this line that's relatively passive, then we can go on and check on what he has against E4 on the next games. If he has some Petrov idea, it doesn't go anywhere. He has 5 more games to play with
Sure.
white, at least.
Sure.
So let's get back to the position. C takes D5 is the usual idea, and honestly, I didn't play it with either color, so I'm not sure what's the right order. I spoke about it a lot yesterday. Knowing the plan is one thing, and knowing the order is
Precise move order.
yeah,
Sure.
that's a completely different task. And I would actually, if you don't mind, I will just check the opening book to see what's the
You know
most
what? I'll bring it
popular
up on my
move here.
computer so that you don't have to do too much. Keep track of the position meanwhile, and I'll bring it up on my computer. But I have a sneaking suspicion that the precise move order would require Rook C1 first. I just
So, let's see. Bishop F4, castles, E3, C5, DC5,
Takes.
Bishop C5. So,
Bishop C5.
so this position after Bishop C5 arose almost 5,000 times, according to my statistics here.
Right.
Maybe even more. We'll see.
Yeah.
No, quite a lot of times. And the most popular move here
Is drum roll?
Queen C2
Oh, Queen C2. Okay, that's what I was
or
saying
A3.
before.
Queen C2, A3, and C takes D5. Or the
And Rook
three.
C1 is not on the I had thought Rook C1 before that. I said Queen C2, but I don't know, for some reason you see, this is what happened. I ignore my own intuition.
To not do that, just improve it.
And it's quite surprising, though, that we're seeing this kind of time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this isn't
Let's see.
this isn't a surprising position if you're going to play a D4 C4 line. So I can't really imagine that Carlsen is stuck here.
Judging by what we saw on the Leech's broadcast, there is
Some delay.
some delay, and then we see 5 moves straight away being blasted. And I predict they spend some time thinking. And the clocks are back.
And the clocks are back.
All right.
They're not
Half of our viewers can remain with us.
Yeah, that being said, the clocks aren't moving, which is even more strange than the clocks being back.
Wait, what does it mean?
What does it mean? I don't know.
Oh my god. It's not just any clocks, it's on Leech's.
It's the Leech's clocks, yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have to actually speak with Leech's about their clocks.
I wonder what's going on with gravity.
London has fallen.
So,
In all seriousness, though, yesterday's game was a gruelingly long draw.
mhm.
And I am curious to know the physical state of the two players. I mean, that's obviously not information that we're given. Sometimes in sports,
Yeah.
they'll tell you, before a boxing match or before a football game, so-and-so is injured, he's got a broken hand,
Yeah.
And we don't really have access to that kind of information in chess. And you would think, well, what does it matter? It matters that they finished their game as late as they did. And it matters that they're somewhat tired.
I don't think they are that tired.
You
Yeah.
don't think that's tired yet?
Yeah. I think we are more tired than they are,
Yeah.
but we'll struggle to survive throughout the entirety of this match,
Yeah.
no matter how many games they will last. And by the way, I suspected that Carlsen might have a birthday during the match because he was born in November.
Right.
But I checked it before the round, and to our disappointment, even if there are tie breaks, after the closing ceremony, he will have his birthday a day later. So
I see.
it's on the 30th of November.
So they planned it such that he can celebrate.
So he can maintain his World Championship title before turning 28. for the third time. So
I see.
you know this thing when you like have a birthday in 1 week and you're still this, like when people ask you about your age and you still use the same year
Sure.
that you didn't surpass? Yeah.
Yeah. I've been using the same year for about 5 or 6 years, actually.
Wow.
I'm just 40 something. I don't let anybody know exactly what I'm just kidding. Okay, so let's see. We've seen A3, which was the second move, right? The second most popular move.
Yeah. So after A3, let's check some more statistics.
Dubravka Letter would like to know, Tal, how was your dancing class yesterday?
Oh, thank you, Dubravka.
He didn't make it to the dancing class yesterday
Yeah, yeah.
because the game didn't finish till midnight.
So the 1 hour long lesson started at 9:30 and we finished after midnight. And yeah, but I
Okay,
hope I
a
will
few
make
more
it.
moves popped up, yeah.
I will make it on Monday. The next lesson is on Monday, and we have the same scenario. Okay,
Exactly.
so let's see. So far, I suspect we're following mainline theory. So Queen C2. These are actual moves from the game.
Now
And,
I understand why he didn't play Rook C1. He was planning to bring the Rook to D1.
Knight C6. A3 is the main move.
Queen A5.
Rook D1. And Rook D8, which is not the main move. I think it's some form of preparation by Caruana. Let's see if any other top players played it recently. I don't see a single player going for Rook D8 in the recent games. Rook D8. Last time was played was in 2015 by
some pretty strong players, though.
no.
No strong players.
The strongest player I can see who played it was 2500, which is not such a high standard for this kind of
For theoretical
lines and players. So normally you would expect at least 5 games by 2600 plus rated players. But now the only game that I see that makes sense, is some international masters, and it was played in 1995. So Rook D8, I think, is mainly addressed to avoid preparation.
Right.
I assume that Caruana found some ideas to justify this move on top of the current theory, but we will not know until we see.
So several people, including Satan Kurz and Rai says
Knight D2 is the main move, by the way.
Konu or Talionu would like to know why B4 doesn't work, which I think is a very reasonable question to ask. There's what seems to be a very obvious tactical blow here. If you play B4, you fork bishop and queen.
Yeah.
So what's the problem? Why not B4?
Interesting. So I had the idea to prepare before the stream a separate board for analysis, but I forgot to do so. So let me just mention every now and then when we are outside of the game's range and when we are back to the game. So at this particular moment, we haven't diverted from the game even once. We just used arrows, and I'm going to do it for the first time now by putting b4 on the board. Remember, the position is after rook d8. Carlsen is still thinking, and I'll mention when he makes his move, at least on the Lichess broadcast. So
what we're doing right now is analyzing the position by adding our own moves. For those people who are wondering why he can't play b4.
yeah, so let's add b4 and now see what we have in this position. And just to mention once again, for those who didn't hear us yesterday, we are not using engines whatsoever throughout the stream. And even if we will do it for the sake of analysis or learning from our suggestions, we will mention it, and the viewers will be able to view the engine's moves as well. Okay, so b4, Now, the most logical move will be knight takes b4. And, okay, white is forced to take, and bishop takes b4, pinning the knight. And then, no matter what white does, whether he defends with the rook or with the king, black can go with knight e4 and add more pressure to this knight and win material. So, for example,
win back material.
Yeah, with dividends of
dividends of a pawn.
Of 2 actually. Yeah.
Oh, 2 points.
Yeah. Even more if you look at it deeper and think about a miserable white king. So b4 not only fails but loses the game. I don't think the players actually are even considering it. Knight d2 is the main move played in almost all of the games that reach this position thus far.
So if I could, as the weaker player here,
yeah.
b4 is the kind of move that I would have probably made. It's the kind of move where you see a tactic, it's a very obvious, what we call simple tactic, and you just blast b4 instantaneously. And one of the things that you've told me many times is, just because you see what looks like a winning tactic, doesn't mean it doesn't deserve a few seconds of serious attention.
Or minutes.
And therefore, take a look at b4 and ask yourself, what are the responses? We can look at the response with the bishop, that fails. We can look at the response with the queen, that fails. But we might miss, not that the knight can take, we might miss that after knight takes, bishop takes, that pin is inescapable. Because it's a supported pin. You've got not only the bishop pinning, you've got the queen pinning as well. And next thing you know, not only have you broken through on the queen side, the king is 2 moves away from castling and is in deep is in serious trouble. So for those of us who have a tendency to blast out that tactical blow and say, haha, I got you, and then are shocked a second and a half later where our opponent just very calmly responds with a move, take a minute, take a deep breath. You actually told me, look away from the board for a second. You don't have to stare at the static position the whole time. Play b4, take a look away from the board for a second, go back, notice the options, and you just might catch yourself not playing b4 because you found the solution before giving it to your opponent.
So, as far as I can tell, it all boils down to the simple basic principle. That's very easy to say, but not to exactly apply. Do not rush. And I like the fact that, at least to me, all the principles in chess, they also apply to real life in a way. Once you rush and once you are focused on reacting as opposed to thinking, that's when there's potential for trouble and let's say reckless behavior to...
You know, yesterday you spoke quite a lot about the Baron Blitz training system in which you advocate for playing a lot of blitz. And again, when Tal says blitz, he doesn't mean 3-minute games. You're talking about 10 plus 10, 15 plus 15, things of that sort. And the advice that you gave me was, if you use that for the kind of training that we were talking about yesterday, when you come into a real game, a classical game, you actually feel like you've got all the time in the world. And you don't need to rush. You're not feeling pressured to rush, because the fact is, you can see the clock. You know when an hour and a half is something to get, to feel luxurious about when you're used to playing a 10 plus 10 all the time.
So yeah, even 3-minute feels luxurious with no increment when you know the opening and you're leading on time compared to the opponent and you're used to this time control. But what I mean by playing blitz in order to improve is that I put a lot of emphasis on the openings as a skill set and not as just a matter of knowledge and memory. And by playing a lot of moves in different openings that you play against real opponents in real time, you're creating an interactive method of learning and practicing your skills and developing your intuition, given the condition that you, of course, learn from the critical mistakes that you make. So playing a few blitz games and then going over them from the opening point of view is a very good way to improve various skills, starting from tactics to openings to intuition to general chess understanding. And that, of course, assumes, like presuming that you're on a high enough level in the first place to be able to keep up with some basic ideas and not blunder your queen by move 10 every time. So that's why we said this stream, and most of these advices are addressed to a certain level of players, which is mentioned in the description.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea behind this, you know, when we first discussed this, we mentioned this yesterday as well. When you and I sat down over a beer and we said, listen, wouldn't it be cool to be able to sit down together and watch the World Championship and have me ask you the same questions that I normally ask you during our own lessons? You know, here I am, I'm a player who is trying to get better, is learning the game. I've made some progress over the past year, you know, popped up like 150 rating points. But the fact is, I've got a lot to learn. You've got a lot to teach. And the next thing that hit us was, wait a minute, if that's the case, why not live stream the entire thing? So this really is sort of a live stream of commentary and analysis, but also a lesson format. I feel like I'm getting, really it's a very luxurious lesson. I mean, how many people get to sit down for 7 hours with a grandmaster and ask him every question in the book?
Looking at the best players in the world.
While watching the best players in the world, absolutely. And so for those viewers who are thinking, well, this commentary seems like it's a slightly below my level, it may very well be. It's possible if you're a 2300, 2400 level player that you don't necessarily need this commentary. But for all of those players below 2200, below 2300, we're going to try to provide you with a real-time lesson, a real-time program, and I hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah, I know I do.
Well, I certainly do. I get the most out of this. So for me, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah. Okay, I'm improving my English as well. At least practicing it after a long period of not being active on YouTube. And even then, I'm more or less talking to myself. So it's a different kind of lesson. So here, after Rook D8, 92 is the main move. I wonder if Caruana is thinking or if time actually stopped and they're all frozen.
Yeah, everybody seems to have just frozen in their position.
Waiting
like we were doing last night.
Oh, yeah.
Several times.
I guess we predicted the future in a way. So, in this situation here,
the clock is moving, and I am surprised to see Magnus thinking this long. It's still a fairly straightforward opening position.
Yeah, it is. And I would say that okay, let's try to analyze the opening from scratch, just to mention a few basic ideas. So, and when I say basic, again, I mean to the average standard of between 1700 to 1900, just so that people who understand some basic things about chess and try to explain to them some moves that are contrary to the principles of development and so on. So, up until now, I have nothing serious to explain, conquering the center and developing pieces from both sides. They want to castle as quickly as possible. Bishop f4 is a little bit against the rules, the classical rules, because you want to develop as quickly as possible. But as I explained, you want to play e3 without
blocking your own bishop.
Yeah, so that's the magic of move order. If you change the order, then you can pass through walls that don't exist yet.
Right, like we said, the moment there are central pawns on the same color as your bishop, it is called a bad bishop. But a bad bishop outside of the pawn chain is a lot less bad than a bad bishop behind the pawn chain. And in this case, it's not really such a bad bishop. It's just a technically bad bishop.
Yeah. So now c5 is a move that isn't recommended if you don't have justification for it yet, because you're playing the black pieces and you're opening the center, and if they capture, you move your bishop for a second time. That's a waste of time in the classical sense of the word, but there is a justification for it. White spent an extra move with a piece that's not in the direction of his classical castling, so we kind of gain time in a way. So c5 tries to put pressure on the, let's say, white queen side, because there is no bishop there. So there is one tempo less and no bishop on the queen side. And for that reason, the tactic that we saw later on in the game here, the tactic along this diagonal, works in black's favor. because if the bishop were on c1, then bishop d2 would
Entirely
solve
falls apart.
a lot of problems, and b4 would have been winning after rook d1. Assuming I had a bishop somewhere, let's say on d2, b4 would win the game. So here, in this position, c5 is justified by what I just mentioned.
Which is why you see it in the Tarash defense, which is not so much different from this structurally in terms of the pawn structure.
Yeah, and many other.
And you see something quite similar in the Grunfeld as well. That c5 break, that c5 break combined with queen to a5 is something that can yield pressure against an uncastled king.
Exactly. So bishop takes is very normal. Now black wants to play knight c6 and push d4 if he can. So white plays queen c2 for that reason. If he played bishop e2, he wouldn't be in time to stop d4. But because they played Carlsen played queen c2, now after knight c6 and a3, d4 is not as useful. And to be honest, I'm not sure what's the reason. I assume it has something to do with castling long. Because, as we mentioned, black strategy is based on white not having castled, and now he castles.
And that castles long.
Yeah, and this pin makes it very difficult for black to defend the pawn, and he's under a lot of pressure. So, let's see. a3, by the way, is an important prophylactic move, because had white castled immediately, then I'm not sure what's the best move, but it will be less flexible, and black would have the chance to exert pressure on the queen side without having played d4. d4 is a compromise.
In this position, can I just force the knight into the equation, or is that just a waste of time?
Which, the knight b4?
Yeah.
I don't see a justification for it on the next move. So
that's what I'm asking.
So in the strategical sense, it moves it away from the center. But let's say I play queen a5 to develop my queen.
Okay.
And now I might want to take if you move your bishop.
Right.
And then a6 b5 or something. So let's say white takes, and now I take. In this situation, the knight b4 definitely is an option later on, and especially given the fact that the bishop can follow it to f5 later.
Right.
So,
and this is something that you mentioned to me many, many times, that the lower level players will sometimes start developing an intuition about a move. I know knight b4 can be part of some sort of a plan. So if that's the case, maybe rather than just snapping off that move, which is the reason guys like me lose games, maybe instead you just say, hey, you know what? There seems to be a plan here that can be built around knight b4. If that's the case, what are the other moves that, when integrated into a full plan, can justify knight to b4? And then maybe you've got yourself an actual middle game plan.
Yeah. So in this position,
again, assuming you don't know the actual, theoretical moves here, which is going to happen.
Yeah. So queen c2 is a developing move that you would normally do after bishop e2 and castling, but because of the circumstances, the special circumstances that black played c5, then white changes the order of his developing moves in order to address d4 in advance. So he's prepared to meet d4 with long castles, but in some cases you would just play bishop e2 and castle short.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, or if d takes c4, I obviously won't castle long because it's against the rules.
Sure.
So I wish I would, but bishop takes c4 and then castles, maybe rook d1 first and then I castle, and I have some healthy lead in development. By the way, that's another point of queen c2, to save a tempo on the bishop so that I can capture the c4 pawn in one move. And bishop e2 is on the board. So rook d8, Carlsen did not play the most popular move. He played bishop e2.
Dr. FT says, if you are under 2300, I suggest being a garbage man. Actually, if you're under 2600, you might have to be a garbage man.
No. If you're between 2300 to 2600, you can be a carpenter.
You can be a carpenter.
Yeah.
Listen, the unfortunate reality is that chess doesn't receive the kind of funding that other games do, and if you're anything but the very, very best, meaning if you're not in that elite 2700 club, your source of income might not be from chess at all, and it certainly isn't from competitive chess. That's just the reality. We do hope that sort of thing changes over time. But I know, and again, I mentioned this yesterday, I've been lucky enough to get to know a lot of very, very strong players. And I know for a fact how few of them are able to support themselves just off of chess.
Yeah. I have a very long-term plan to support myself through chess, but it starts by commentating this World Championship for free and doing a bunch of other things for free for many years, and maybe then thinking harder. That's my method. Like if I'll be hungry enough,
Excellent.
maybe I'll find a
It's
good
an
move.
excellent plan. I'm going to keep doing stuff for free until I really, really need the money. But no, in all seriousness, listen, there was a time, I can tell you, for example...
94.
94, yeah.
That's what you could tell us.
Yeah. There was a time when martial arts also was a zero income endeavor. And great fighters were barely able to make, except for boxing, but great fighters were never able to make any money. I mean, Bruce Lee didn't make any money from fighting. He made his money from movies, and before that from books and teaching people and things of the sort.
I can act. Yeah, sorry.
There you go. I can't. But I can fight.
Let's combine our forces into one character.
And we'll make a new movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dr. FT has a fair point. We should be garbage men.
Yeah.
And with that, 94 is on the board. And as you mentioned yesterday, there is always value to having a piece on your opponent's side of the board, especially when that piece is supported by a pawn. Now, yesterday you were talking about a far post. That would require an open file here. But the reality is that just having that knight on what we call an outpost, well planted, with a pawn supporting it, means that knight is a thorn in white's side. It's an irritating piece to have, especially as it commands important... it's on a central square.
Yeah, let me check if bishop e2 was played before instead of knight d2. I believe bishop e2 might be a novelty. No, it was played in 2014 by Mason. Donald Mason.
That's the only game in the database with this position.
That I can see.
D. Mason 2167 versus Tambini J.
Jasper Tambini
2047. So nobody at the Grandmaster or even at the International Master level has...
Yeah. And now 94 is a novelty. I think it's officially a novelty.
Just to be clear, again, for the purposes of full disclosure, we're looking on a different screen at the database on ChessBase, but the engine is off.
Yeah.
We will never turn on the engine without letting you know well in advance and warning you that we're going to turn on the engine, because the goal here, again, is for me to have a chess lesson and for you to have a chess lesson and for Tal to have the
challenge,
the challenge of teaching people about the game of chess. And the moment you turn on an engine, frankly stated, unless you're already a grandmaster, the moment you turn on the engine, a lot of times the learning stops. And
especially if you're a grandmaster.
And the imitation starts.
Especially if you're a grandmaster.
So you would say even for grandmasters, the engine use is...
Their brains usually work the hardest, so it stops working
I see what you mean.
At the largest relative amount.
I had a conversation with Elias Mirin about it.
Dogs agree.
And the dogs agree. I had a conversation with Elias Mirin about it, and he says he can't remember the last time that he checked a position with an engine. And this is you're talking about a serious player at that point. You're talking about a guy who
X2700
2700 level player, and he says he can't remember the last time that he checked a position with an engine in order to learn something. He says he checks sometimes to confirm, but not to learn.
Yeah. So in this position right here, c takes d5 has been played, and to be honest, I still have difficulty to understand what's going on my own, because so many principles are broken in a sense, and now it just becomes concrete. So I can speak at my own language of like what I feel and what is my intuition about the position, but I cannot really say like explain or teach anything about a position I don't understand myself. So let me just guide you through how I would address this situation. And now it's black to move, so let's flip the board and see it from black side. So here I'm down by development. Okay, white will have finished in this development in one move. I have 1, 2, 3 moves to go.
And the moment black castles, he's broken that pin, and then the threat of b4 is a real threat.
Yeah.
In which, so I won't really have. I have 4 moves.
Yeah.
Because I'll lose a move the moment he castles.
So now I'll introduce you to a concept I didn't mention yesterday, but it's a well-known concept in chess. It's called candidate moves. So here I start thinking about which are the candidate moves for me to play as black. And it's kind of useless to ask myself what's my opponent's threat, because I have so many pieces under attack. So there is a different method, and this part of the game is referred to as calculation. So
Okay.
how do I calculate? How do you address a position? So you start by looking for checks, captures, and threats. Okay, checks, captures, and threats.
What you've called in the past forcing moves.
Yes. So, do you have any checks here with black?
No.
Okay. Captures.
Well, I mean, not really. No.
Yeah.
I mean, you have one, but it's not
Yeah,
relevant.
this is not
it's
relevant.
not relevant.
So yeah, effectively no. So captures and threats. Threats are also irrelevant in my opinion, because you have so many pieces under attack. So if you just threat some random piece, it doesn't really help out. Because okay, he captured first. So if he captures, you threat, he captures, he's already leading by 2 pieces. So yeah. So the only relevant part of the calculation here is captures. Which logical captures do you see?
Which logical captures do I see? The first logical capture is either to snap off the knight on c3, to recapture the pawn in the center.
Yes.
I certainly don't want him to have a central pawn just sitting there. I know you've told me many times about maintaining the tension, but I don't know that this is a position where I would maintain the tension, and so I'm either going to take the pawn on d5, or I'm going to take the knight.
How would you consider to take it? Can you disqualify one of these moves?
Can I disqualify one of these moves?
Eliminate them from your calculation. Is one of these moves losing on the spot?
No, I don't think either move is losing on the spot, is it? I can take the rook. I can take with the rook, can't I? Rook takes, rook takes. I mean, the knight is pinned.
Rook takes, white to move. That's one of the problems of being underdeveloped, that
Rook takes, queen takes. Is that the problem? Rook takes, queen takes? Because the knight can't take.
So what happens after rook takes d5?
Yeah, queen takes. That's the problem.
Queen takes what?
Queen takes knight.
Queen takes
Yeah,
d4.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
I hang the piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume that you understood, but I wanted the viewers to know what you're referring to. So queen takes e4, queen takes knight, and black is simply losing a piece. So this would be normally a good move, but this move knight e4 was against the rules to move the knight twice, against the principles, I mean. So it has to be justified either by e takes d5 or by knight takes c3.
Which was, yeah.
The game's position, by the way, is after c takes d5. They still haven't played a move, but in this situation, so these are the 2 candidate moves. So if I could eliminate knight takes c3, then I don't really have to calculate e takes d5 too much. Just make sure that it doesn't lose. So let's think about knight takes c3, which looks interesting. So knight takes c3. Now,
well, I mean, queen after he has to make some sort of a concession here.
so one option is to take this knight.
Sure.
Another one is to take this one with
Sure.
either piece.
Right.
Okay. And I don't see too many other options. So what's the most logical move to begin with?
I would think. I mean, I would think he could take. We would take back with the queen, but it looks like a concession to me, because if he takes back with the queen, queen takes, bishop takes, and I've at least. No.
This is
No,
too-
of course, yeah, because it's still hanging, and this is one of the reasons why. This is one of the things I have a very hard time with. Is this kind of just accurate calculation. I'm very, very poor at it.
So please practice. So
yeah, and then I just have to move the knight, or I have to take the pawn.
With which piece?
If I have to take the pawn, I'm going to take it with the. Wow. Yeah. If I have to take the pawn, I would have to take it with the rook. And then I don't like the end result because after takes, my I just have this lowly and indefensible pawn that's going to do nothing but.
He has two of them.
He has two of them. That's true. That's true.
So it's really hard to say in whose favor this situation is. White now will not castle because the king becomes a strong piece in the endgame.
Sure, it just comes up.
Bring it to d2 and rook later will go to b1. But now we can win a pawn, so maybe it doesn't do that straight away. I suspect that the most principled choice for white, because he's leading in development, is not to exchange queens. In the endgame, the lead is less relevant.
Right.
So, and the king becomes stronger. So the fact that I castled, let me just explain it a little bit deeper. Here, the fact that I castled is not only a waste of a move, my king is farther from the center.
Sure. And
he brings his king to the center in one move. For me, it will take at least two. So.
But when I looked at capturing back with the pawn immediately, it just seemed like.
All right, we have a move. Oh, no, we don't.
No, it seemed like it just loses material. Did I miss something?
We have some updates here. Maybe they played these moves and there is some issue. Because I see the broadcast is updating these moves automatically, but somehow it's stuck on c takes d5. And honestly, c takes d5 doesn't feel like the right move. Just like yesterday with g5. Let me just show for those who were not here with us. So in this position, yesterday g5
yeah, the broadcast showed g5, which hadn't happened.
Yeah, and here we have the same scenario. C takes d5 is a move I don't like. Yeah, and you see now we have a lot of updates.
Yeah, now it disappeared.
I don't know what's going on. Like, I think it's the one who created the broadcast is trying to fix it, but he doesn't know exactly what to do. But if I had to guess without knowing what they actually played, I would say that castles was the move, because c takes d5 is not developing any piece and allows knight takes c3, which we just mentioned. And after b takes c3,
why don't I win a pawn here if with a capture back?
I cannot even make a move. What's going on? After b takes c3, it takes d5. There is some issue for white because of these weak pawns. But we'll see. We'll just wait patiently and see what move happens in the game. Okay. I would recommend white to play castles here because it's developing a piece. But then, like takes, and compared with c takes d5, we didn't break the tension. And c takes d5, e d5 works in black's favor because it opens up the bishop. And it doesn't gain anything in particular, other than exchanging the double pawn, which is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what I recommend, but honestly, if I had to guess, after rook d8, knight d2 is probably a better move than bishop e2 to address knight e4. And by playing bishop e2, Carlsen probably didn't know the correct response and just trusted his intuition. He played it relatively quickly. No, it took 14 minutes for it, but he still...
Yeah, that's the move we were waiting for. That's when we were discussing the option of b4 and we found that doesn't work.
Yeah, so bishop e2, okay, it seems to me like it's not a part of his preparation if he thought for 14 minutes, and I don't think he properly evaluated knight e4. And this is definitely part of Caruana's preparation, and I assume black is already fine. And if he just blasted the move h6, so notice that from the clock's point of view, you start with an hour and 40 minutes, and Caruana now has an hour and 42 minutes on the clock. It means that he gained 2 minutes from the start of the game. Yeah, from the half-minute increment. So he didn't really spend too much time thinking. And h6 is not a move that you make without thinking, if you don't know the position.
Right.
This is a dynamic position, so h6 must have been a computer suggestion aimed against knight g5, threatening some mating ideas. So h6, I assume that was played. I don't know what's going on anymore.
By the way, just to take a moment, in case anybody is unclear what we mean when we say increment, Because there are some beginner players that are watching, genuine beginners who have maybe not even ever played with an increment. In professional chess, in competitive chess, there is a 30-second bonus that you receive each time that you make a move. So if you start in the starting position of the game, you play e4 and you hit your clock. If you started with 90 minutes, after you play e4 and hit your clock, you have 90 minutes and you have that 30-second bonus that's coming.
Yeah.
And what happens with guys who know their openings very well is that they tend to pound out the first 6, 7, 8 moves and actually gain another 4 or 5 minutes just from collecting up those increments. So that's what we mean by an increment. It's not the same thing as the time that's added on in the time control. This happens from move 1.
Yeah. So let's see. I think h6 is on the board. So in this situation, I have two dilemmas. One is what white will play. The second one
is how to fix the remote control for the
air conditioning. Which is important in Israel. People don't know.
So then why don't you commentate and I'll fix the remote control?
I want to use the viewers' help.
No, I think that's...
no, I'm joking.
I think they need more...
No, but the air conditioning is good. I am just interested in fixing something, and I don't think I can fix the position.
You can't fix the position?
Yeah, the pawn structures are fixed.
The pawn structures are fixed. That's very funny.
Yeah, so I guess you're supposed to say fixated, right?
No.
No? Fixed.
No, fixed. Fixated means...
when you do the action of fixating something?
No, that's... No. Fixated is when somebody is over interested. Hyper interested in something. He's fixated on chess, or he's fixated on his work.
So I'm fixated on trying to understand the position from this moment on. Almost works. How lovely. So
love it?
this button doesn't, but it's okay.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll fix it more at each round, more and more. So in this position h6, let me see. So I feel like Caruana is confident and is still within his preparation, which should be equal. Because white didn't play the most popular move 92, which suggests that Carlsen just guessed. And in the opening, even if at the top level in the world, you're not supposed to be good enough to just guess what's the direction in a very critical line of the Queen's Gambit without proper preparation. So just to clarify, Carlsen's rating is 2836. The top engine rating, Stockfish, is above 3400. It's above 3400. So assuming that Caruana or one of his team members, one of his seconds, check this position with Stockfish, Carlsen and his intuition are not comparable with
that level of brute force.
Yeah, exactly. So the point being that Carlsen is not going to lose from the opening, but to challenge the computer and gain an advantage in a game where objectively you should probably not gain an advantage if black plays precisely. So that's something that's I think beyond even a top player's scope in most cases, in the vast majority of cases. So here, after h6, I would try a different approach. Like normally I speak about in terms of advantage and pleasant position and so on, like I said yesterday in the Rosolimo, that I liked white's position. But now it's just becoming, let's say, above my abilities. So I will try to guess what's the right plan. Search for moves and involve you in my thinking process.
Yeah, actually that's a great opportunity for me to learn, because that's exactly what I was going to ask you. As a beginner player with very, very little experience in situations such as this, what do I do here? What is your suggestion in terms of the process?
So first question is, like, you want to know where you're standing. So you check, like, you know that materially, we have a4 on the board. Materially, it's equal. Development wise, white is leading. Statically speaking, black is leading because of the pawn structure. And from the piece activity point of view, not only the development, white is leading because of this bishop. This bishop still needs
which
to
is
find
always a problem in
post.
d4, d5.
That's very true. In the Queen's Gambit
openings.
declined openings.
Yeah.
In the Slav, usually a bit less, but in the e6 related openings, in the like this kind of structure, when the black pawn goes to e6, this bishop, even in the French defense with white, which happens after, let's say, e4, e6, d4, d5, this bishop is the main problem. I have a friend who was one of the best players in Israel, under 14. He was very talented, and he retired from chess. And to this day, when you ask him, why did you retire? He says, because of this bishop. So, and here, after a4, shout out to Matan, if he's ever watching. He's probably not watching chess anymore because he's retired, but spread the word to Matan that I feel for him. So here after a4, which is a logical move, I was just about to say that we ask ourselves, what's the opponent's threat? Sure. And he has a threat to capture the pawn. Not with the queen, because then the queen will be trapped. So let's just make random moves. This is not recommended for black. Okay?
Not best.
The queen is trapped.
Not best for black.
Yeah. But maybe bishop takes a3 is an option. So just doing a random move, h3 to pass the move and see. Bishop takes a3 might be okay for black. I'm still not sure because there's rook a1, but
and then queen c, and then you're forced to play queen c.
Queen c5 still doesn't help because the bishop is trapped. So it blocks the bishop from running away. So probably you cannot take on a3, but you have to keep an eye on this pawn. So for example, if you were to play takes, rook takes in exchange, now suddenly this pawn is under attack because there is no rook a1 anymore. So because you constantly need to keep an eye on this pawn, it might be a flexible idea to just get rid of this problem and also at the same time prevent black from playing d takes c4 followed by b5 in some cases. So I'll just give a very silly example. If white was very passive, like some players are, some lower players would consider rook a1 to defend the pawn, then black can take and play b5 and then develop with tempo and solve his bishop's issue. Yeah? So a4 in the long run is also aimed against the move b5. It also prepares planting the bishop on b5 if necessary. And for that reason, Caruana now played knight d7. He wants to prepare developing this bishop, maybe to d7, without allowing c takes d5 and winning a pawn for white. And now he also wants to attack this pawn in the process. So that's a very interesting looking move. I like this move a lot. It's not a developing move, but black didn't have a good way of developing this bishop. So knight d7 prepares bishop d7 with tempo, followed by either bishop c6 or bishop e8, depending on what white will do. It's very common in these positions. Let's make a random move like h3, again rook a1. So in these positions it's very common for black to just play rook a c8, and then if this bishop is attacked, or just if he wants to open up the position for his pieces, to put it on e8 and just free the pieces while the bishop still maintains all of his potential. That's a high level concept, but I wouldn't say that you have to do it in every game, but it's a good idea to be aware of. So getting back to the game, let's see after knight e7. White is thinking. Caruana took about 4 minutes for that move.
And now we have a question from Yoav Milikov.
All right.
Yoav Milikov wants to know whether white ever has the idea of knight d2 p3.
Well, that's a good question. So,
well, if it's from Yoav Milikov, it's going to be a good question for you. For anybody who doesn't know, he's one of the top talents here in Israel at that age level.
So
it's 14. It's 14.
Yeah. So in in this position, and you are asking questions ahead of the time, because I'm trying to get to these points, and then you're asking about the next one as if you already know what I'm going to say. So I said, what's the opponent's threat? In this situation, it was taking on a3, but now there is no threat. So the next question, normally speaking, if there is no threat by the opponent,
then the next question you've always told me to ask is, which piece of mine is least efficient or least active?
Correct. Which piece doesn't work? That's how I like to phrase it, because in Hebrew you can say it with Russian accent, and
right.
That's how I was introduced to it. And
no, but if you're going to say it with a Russian accent, you have to say which piece not working.
Which piece not
which piece not working? Yeah, because that's how Ilya always says it. Yeah. That's how Ilya Smirin always says it to me. But which piece not working? Which piece not working?
I guess every Ilya in history probably
something. That's probably entirely true.
By the way, if it wasn't clear to you by now, or if you're new to my channel, then I offend everyone equally, so including myself. So regarding the question itself and not the accent, which piece doesn't work? Here, one of my top choices is for white. Is the knight on f3, because the bishop doesn't have a lot of places to go to.
I would have thought the bishop on e2 is the least active piece.
Yeah, but it's protecting c4, so there's no point to put it on another diagonal, and bishop d3 doesn't really do much. So this rook is on an open file. This rook doesn't work, but it's hard to improve it. So, but one of the let's say logical ideas could be rook d2 or rook somewhere, to try to either double the rook or free the other rook to do something nice. Because, for example, as I said earlier, with our favorite waiting move, h3, bishop d7, rook a1 is passive, because now to bring this rook to d2 will take 2 moves. But this idea of moving this rook up and then moving this rook to a1 saves time in this particular sense. So freeing the rook on f1 is kind of logical. So either this rook doesn't work and we play rook d2, or rook b1 and then putting this rook on d1, or rook a1 or whatever, or the second option
is to free the knight. Is to advance the knight.
Advance the knight, yeah. And you do that by means of either knight d2 or knight d4, followed by knight b3 or knight b5.
So Yoav's idea is knight d2 b3.
Yeah, knight d5 is also possible sometimes. But right now, I don't like it because of potential f6, e5 ideas for black, which grab some space. So, for example, let's say something like this, and then bishop f5. This doesn't look too good for white. So knight d4 seems like a little bit more active way to apply what Yoav just mentioned, and like you told, and one of the things you've pointed out to me as a beginner is if you can look for ways to undouble your pawns, or to at least, put your opponent in a situation where he can't capture without at least fixing your pawns for you, then you've gained a little bit of time in terms of moves, or at least you've fixed what was until then a static problem. Yes, taking is not an option for black, because it not only fixes the pawns, it also how do you say it? Surrenders the bishop pair. Yeah. So you don't want to.
And the center.
Yeah. So bishop d7 is a logical idea against it, and now knight b3 with this small fork, and if the queen moves, then I take the bishop and I get the bishop pair. This is good for me.
Well, the queen is going to move, so...
I mean, moves backwards.
Moves away, yeah.
Queen takes a4 is the most logical response to pin the knight, after which you would probably play rook a1. And now the only move not to lose the queen nor the bishop is queen c6.
Queen c6,
yeah,
right.
Exactly, and now...
And now I can still take the bishop pair.
Yeah, but I have a pawn down, so I don't like the outcome of this variation for white. So knight b3 was not... let's say sufficient. On top of that, there is bishop takes e4 to be aware
pressurizing
of.
the knight, yeah.
Yeah. So even though it's an interesting idea, this knight d4 or knight d2 move, I'm not sure if it's the most active way to play. In fact, maybe the rook is more urgent than the knight, because the knight is already in the center. So something along the lines of rook d2.
But you stopped before you continued with the knight to b5, which, by the way, placing a knight to b5 in Queen's Gambit decline, it happens a lot. It's not uncommon. So what's wrong with knight on b5?
First of all, it creates this threat to win an exchange.
Right.
If you take, once again, I can fix my pawns. Yeah. Double pawns. So I think the main thing that we should check is what happens if black continues with the move he already wanted to play, rook a8, and while neutralizing our threat. What's our follow-up? And
because because a6 is coming next.
a6 is coming next in most cases. Maybe d takes c4. Also possible as bishop e8 or bishop c6 on the next move. So now the critical move that I can think of is knight d6, attacking the rook, but it fails because of bishop a4, creating this double threat.
Material. Yeah.
That's how I see it. Yeah, now there is this line, knight takes b7, attacking the queen. And black can simply play bishop takes c2, knight takes a5, and win an exchange. So after knight b5, the dogs don't want to lose an exchange.
Yeah, the neighbor's dogs are very, very unhappy.
Very sensitive to losing an exchange.
With that analysis.
Yeah. I mean, they only allow it if you have some very good positional compensation, like rook g3 yesterday. It was very powerful. Let's see.
And that's when they started barking. Yeah, you're exactly right.
I'm curious.
Generally speaking, the dogs certainly have better understanding of chess than
us.
Than we do.
Us humans.
But
but they're not good at communicating.
They're just very poor at communicating it.
Yeah. So here I think rook g3 was the move. Yeah, if I'm not wrong. This was a beautiful concept. So let's continue. 97. So with white to move, knight d4 and knight
Michael
b5.
Gamino asks, can you turn off the click sound? But I'm not quite sure what click sound he's referring to.
The mouse.
Is anybody else hearing a click other than the mouse? It's the mouse click? Okay.
I mean, I cannot.
And Stephen Emmanuel wants to know, Joseph Levine, your favorite chess player of all time is? Okay, I'm going to tell you the truth. Because I have very limited experience and knowledge in chess, and I've only been studying the game for about 3 years in any serious way. I don't even feel like I'm qualified to comment on this was the great player, that was the great player. That being said, there are 1 or 2 players that I like studying their games just because of style, and the name that comes to mind the most is Mamedyarov. And that has absolutely nothing to do with, I'm not trying to compare him to other players because I don't feel like I'm qualified to do that. But every time I see a game of his, I have this satisfied, even the losses, I have this sort of satisfying feeling like I could live with playing that
95.
way. 95. Yeah, whereas when I see some other players who might even be stronger, for example, like Carlsen, I don't wish I could play like Carlsen, and I do wish I could play like Mamedyarov. So that's really the only name I can throw out there. Beyond that, like I said, come back to me in a couple of years when I know enough about chess to say who was a good player and who wasn't. But we did get 95.
Yeah. Nobody asked me, but I will still answer.
No, I think he actually did ask you.
Sometime in the past.
And anyway, you're a grandmaster, so you have the right. You have the right to volunteer your opinion on chess.
So, as far as I can say, okay, I'm following most of the games by Israeli grandmasters, just because I know them personally and so on. And there's one particular player that's always having an interesting games going on and fighting, and his name is Tamir Nabati, and he has a very unique style. It's both similar and different to the style of Rapport and Jobava, but each one.
Yeah, I was going to say every time I go over and look at the board when he's playing, I see a position that doesn't come from any opening I've ever heard of or looked at or seen or anything. And I for one time I jokingly said, does he not know openings? And everybody's like, he doesn't.
No,
but I don't think that's true. I think he knows them.
That's exactly the opposite of true, because he is. You can claim that he is one of the world's leading expert in his sidelines.
I see.
So
I
like
see.
claiming that someone doesn't know openings because he doesn't play the openings that everyone play.
Is a false. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's false logic. But I have to add on the same note that Gelfand, Rothstein, and Sutovsky are all very interesting players to watch at their own right. And from instructive point of view, from my own journey point of view, watching Gelfand and Rothstein playing chess teaches me the most because it just show every time I watch their games, they're making moves that make me question my chess understanding. And with the other players, maybe they can calculate better or see some dynamic options or know some openings, but it's like I have this kind of huge respect to the old school Russian way of playing chess, which is okay. I can also name some world leading experts like Kramnik and Adams that I really enjoy watching.
So
the
that
list
actually
is
leads
very
me.
long.
That actually leads me to one of those Patzer questions that I promised I would be asking throughout the broadcasts. If a player like myself, a 1300 level player, is going to start to get to know great players, is he better off looking all the way back at players like Steinitz and these guys, or is he better off finding a modern player like Mamedyarov or Gelfand? Because I've heard both sides of that argument. I've heard people say there's no way in the world that you can understand anything Mamedyarov and Gelfand are doing if you're below 2400.
Bishop d6 on the board.
And I've heard people say, if you're going to sit there and start looking at games by Steinitz and Lasker and guys like that, you're never going to learn all the complexities of modern chess. So what do you think? What would you advise the viewers?
So I will be a little bit indirect and I will answer in the same style that a world champion once answered. I will not name him so people will not judge the answer. But when asked who is your favorite player, he answered myself and explained that you have to love your own journey and wish to experience it from your own perspective first and foremost. So in a sense I recommend for each and every one of you, not from the arrogant point of view, but just from the, let's say, you can call it just a matter of choice, choose so that your favorite player to investigate will be yourself. And if you feel like watching a game, play a game. You're watching it as you're playing
it.
This
goes back to what you and I were talking about yesterday, about how important it is to focus on your own development.
Yeah, but if you want to view a game, then the way to do so, the proper way to do so, is to get a book about, like, I'm talking from the Grandmaster standard, which is also applicable for beginners, in my opinion. If you are ready to challenge yourself, so you pick up a book by a top player about his own games. It could be a top player of the past, it could be someone of today, because they're all humans, they're all using the same language, assuming it's either English or Russian or something else. They're using the same language for the book, and there is nothing that surpasses a player that provides notes to their own games from many different aspects. But I think I can it's easier to understand intuitively than for me to provide all the arguments for it. So several top players I talked to recommended this, and one good example is to watch like a Kasparov's book on Garry Kasparov. He has a series called My Great Predecessors, which is great in its own right.
It's tough material.
Yeah, but
it really is tough material.
Yeah, but looking at Kasparov's game with a real chessboard, not on the laptop,
sure,
with the book, and seeing what he says about his own games, the words, not the variations, the words. That's very important. If you want to be professional, you can look at the variations and try to use it as exercises and so on, but if you just want to be interested in the player and his thoughts, then look at the words and learn from what he is commentating. and every now and then you can see on the databases, on the mega database, I believe, notation by world champions about their own games, like Anand and Carlsen and a bunch of other players. I'm not sure.
You can search by annotation. You can search the database by annotation to find it.
But this is not the most efficient way to improve your chess. That's just if you like to watch games and you're interested in their thoughts from the scientific point of view or from the psychological point of view. If you're a chess fan, let's say.
So you would say that if you're talking about actual chess improvement, you should be focusing much more on finding the flaws in your own thinking process in your own games, rather than looking at hundreds and hundreds of games by top players. You're not saying don't look at the games by the top players. You're saying guys like me,
do it for fun.
But you're saying guys like me should be focusing on why am I making the mistakes that are keeping me at a low rating, rather than trying to spend time entertaining myself with the games by guys like Fischer.
So I have a GM friend that I practice with, and we both watch games for fun in general, like just every top event that is being broadcasted live. So we watch the games, and every now and then we are curious about a position, and we find a move that we think is strong or interesting to analyze, and then we challenge each other with exercises that we made up from the recent games. And that's a more efficient way, I believe, to learn from the modern games. And it's more interesting when it's new, just from the psychological, motivational point of view. When it's a new game, it was played yesterday, it's much more interesting to follow.
Absolutely.
And from the opening perspective, it's also much more rewarding at higher level, but it's also fun, in my opinion, for a beginner to play the same opening that you see Mamedyarov playing and beating another world champion or another, someone who's a world champion or an former world champion. And I remember as a boy playing, and I would play these guys who would surprise me in the opening, and I would consider myself a good opening player. And then I'm asking, like, what's this variation? And it's like, oh, Smyslov played it in the 60s. It was an interesting idea.
Sure.
I just figured it's hard to refute. And okay, computers suggest an advantage for me, but over the board and in the analysis, I was very impressed. Like, oh, he knows Smyslov games. I should probably know a lot of things about chess as well. And over the course of the years, I'm just looking through games of the world champions. It's because I think it's a cultural thing to do. And you can improve from this just the same way you can improve your, let's say, your ability to express yourself from reading books. But you should first talk to people and express yourself.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. As a professional linguist, as a professional translator, I can tell you that the thing you need to do the most is speak the language. If you're trying to learn the language, you need to speak the language. Reading is important. It's the best input. But nothing but actually doing it gets you there. Why do you think the think has been so long? I mean, we analyzed this entire position. Is there some candidate move we overlooked?
The move I said I disliked because of f6.
Because of f6.
I guess there's knight g6 that I overlooked.
Okay.
Yeah. So in this case, after e5, I'm assuming there is something, but I don't know what. Maybe takes and bishop takes h6 is maybe interesting for white. And now if g takes h6, then queen g6 check. That looks sufficient, at least for a draw, if not more. So
because the bishop is coming in next. Yeah.
So the king cannot really escape from the checks without being under attack. And maybe there is more. I don't know. So it's not that bad. I'm not sure what's the best move, but after bishop d6, I believe that black is preparing some nasty ideas like g5. So no. There's bishop d3. I was wrong. But what else? Maybe bishop takes e5 and d takes e4. I mean that's a move that's not so difficult to explain, but very difficult to find. So You want to play bishop d7, but you don't want to give in the bishop pair. So you're playing bishop d6, creating a threat on the knight, putting pressure on the knight, which is, in a sense, in black's camp. This is black's camp over here. So you're putting pressure on this knight, and you're kind of threatening to take it and play d takes c4 and release yourself from the tension of the white pieces in the center, maybe even win material. And white doesn't have a good way of like increasing the pressure by bringing this rook to the game, so he has to find some concrete idea. I have no idea what this is.
Now you had talked about possibly doubling the rooks on the d file. You had talked about possibly bringing the rook on d1 up so that the second rook has the options of either d1, b1, or a1. Are those still candidate moves in this position? Is there something? Because again, what you told me was question number one for beginners like myself. Question number one, what's my opponent's threat? There's no real threat in this position. Question number two, in cases like that, okay, which is the piece? Which piece can I activate? You know, which is the piece that's doing the least? It would see. Again, for me as a total beginner, the piece that seems to be doing the least is the rook on f1. So my temptation would be to bring the rook bring the rook from d1 to d2, and then I have at least the option of d1, b1, a1 for the rook. The knight doesn't have to move right now.
Okay, in that case, I will play bishop takes e5.
Bishop takes.
And d takes e4. I'm attacking the bishop in a sense. But you can still
rook
play
takes. Why can't I just take with the rook?
This is even more interesting because you're preventing bishop d7
with the threat of
and in this case you're threatening mate.
Yeah.
So, not yet, but I cannot take the bishop. You're indirectly protecting the bishop on e5.
So you're saying I'm developing a piece and
yeah. So I like rook d2 because here rook d1 is emphasizing white's lead in development, and bishop takes e4.
Yeah, and again, that's just based on those basic principles that you said, beginner players like myself should use, which is the piece that's working the least.
Yeah.
So rook d2 seems to make sense, but...
So what is black going to do if white is playing rook d2? Maybe f6 now. Because the knight protects g6, and in knight g6 case I can just take and exchange on f4, but that also looks good for white because of the black development. I don't know, it's really hard to say. That's a tough position for me to evaluate, but my gut feeling is that it should favor white because of the development. d takes e4 looks kind of logical. Take,
rook d1.
Rook d1.
Rook d1 first, and then, I think.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, now I have some issues to develop. I'm threatening bishop d7. I'm not sure if you can prevent it. So I'm suspecting that black is fine in case of this f6, but there's still a lot to calculate because there's also just knight going back. No, but here e5 and the knight protects g6, so there is no sack on h6. So this is bad for white. So I guess knight g6 is the main move. Takes. Yeah, that looks fine. So rook d2 allows f6, and that's the point. By bishop d6 is preparing f6, and he wants to trade off a lot of pieces and try to finish with his development.
So rook d2 allows f6, and let's assume that, again, I've gone through your process, the process that you've suggested, and I found that rook d2, and I found that rook d2 allows f6, and now what? What's the next step? You say, okay, rook d2 allows f6, and therefore it's entirely bad, not good enough, good enough. What's the next step in the process? Do I just reject rook d2 and move on to some other option?
First of all, you have to decide whether you play for the initiative or not, and I would say that given the fact that Caruana played the opening quickly, and you probably as white made some inaccuracy with bishop e2, at least if I were white, I would sense that, oh, maybe I don't have objective advantage anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So playing like a4 and knight e5, which are not a developing move, at least like it's not a sequence of developing moves, I would suspect that I'm not having the advantage here.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, I would be cautious about my next moves, because if I play carelessly and for the advantage, and black just plays a bunch of random moves and like logical moves and neutralizes my initiative, I will be left with a worse position because of the pawn structure. So white actually wants to equalize, statically speaking, while at the same time attempting for a dynamic advantage. So if I were white, I would search for let's say an energetic way to play, hoping my opponent will not find the correct direction into equality, the path to equality. So
what about knight d3 then?
Knight d3 in this position.
Mm-hmm. In other words, I'm just looking at other moves other than rook d2.
Knight d3. I guess I will take the free pawn, and
that's it. Yeah, I just basically just hang a pawn.
It's not that bad, but okay. Let's say you take here.
Right.
If I take, you defend your bishop.
Right.
So actually, if I take, you also can go bishop takes e7, which is interesting. So I probably take here, and now knight b2, double attacking this pawn, maybe recapturing on c4 with tempo. That actually looks really good for white, because you're still preventing me from developing the bishop.
Mm-hmm.
So d takes c4 was a mistake on my side after knight d3. Maybe I should take.
Takes.
Knight takes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was my assumption.
Now I'm thinking whether I should play bishop d7.
Does
yeah,
this still allow?
this
is still allow the same f6, which was the real reason that we rejected rook d2.
f6 with tempo was the reason, because e5 was coming.
So,
f6 makes no sense in itself. I think they played something, because I saw some update. Yeah, we have some update. C takes d5 was played. So this is probably good for black, because I have the tempo of bishop takes a4, so you don't have time to win a pawn. You actually lose a pawn if you take here, because after this and that.
Takes,
yeah. So the way I see it, knight d3 is not a good attempt for an advantage. C takes d5 makes some sense, because once mentioned probably more than once that white has a development lead.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you play when you lead in development?
Well, your argument was to play energetically.
And you open the center.
Right.
So firstly, I have to mention that knight d5 fails to knight c4 with the fork. Yeah, and the bishop also.
You also told me that if you can trade away a double pawn and get rid of that weakness on the board, do it. So
yeah, but you have to be aware that bishop f5 comes with tempo on the next move. So if you just allow him to develop with tempo, then cd5 will have been a mistake. But it's white to move, and he has another move to justify it. He did take with the knight. I was wrong.
Doesn't bishop d7 come with a better tempo?
Wait. I just said that he cannot take with the knight because of knight c4, and then he did it.
And then he did it.
I missed the simple tactic. He can play queen takes c3. And after queen takes c3, knight takes c3, he's hitting the bishop.
And the rook, and the other bishop.
Yeah, but
more
importantly the bishop, because here I don't have time to take the rook.
Right.
But this is still challenging. I don't know. Like, okay, it's probably good for black. Yeah. So knight takes d5 is, if possible, then it's definitely a good move. If knight c4 doesn't work. And here I would really try hard to find the most principled way for white to fight for the initiative. There is no equality here. Either you fight for the initiative or you fight for equality. Yeah. From White's perspective. So he plays bishop f3, which is a very active move. So I tried to delve into tactics with knight c4, which failed, but the simple approach to the game is like, which piece doesn't work? Okay, let's improve the bishop with tempo.
And the fact that he's threatening to double my pawns...
Now he's threatening knight c4 because there's no bishop hanging here anymore.
Right, but the fact that he's threatening to double my pawns is not something I need to react to. I'm not better off bringing the bishop... I mean, I'm not suggesting that bishop g3 is actually a good move, but I am asking why am I just going to ignore that threat? Is that just not the biggest threat on the board? Is that the point?
Which threat?
What I'm saying is, in this position, before bishop f3 is played...
Ignore which threat?
What I'm wondering is, do I have to be concerned with the fact that after knight takes f4, pawn takes, I have this sort of dead-in-the-water pawn? Is that not a concern at all? Is that not reason enough to move the bishop? And if not, why not? That's what my real question is. Why not?
The reason to move the bishop. This bishop.
Yeah. I'm saying...
The bishop on f4.
Yeah, I'm saying this is...
if black takes on f4, he gains two things. He kind of ruins white structure, he gets the bishop there.
Right.
However, in this case, if you do that, you also open up the diagonal, you open up the file, and I am leading in development. So having 5 pieces in the game versus 4 is one thing, but having 4 versus 3
is much worse.
Is worse for you.
You've told me that many times, yeah.
And that's a matter of percentile.
Sure. That's just the raw math.
Yeah, 2 versus 1 is 100% advantage.
Yeah, 3 divided by 4, sure.
Yeah, exactly. So we just have more power compared to the opponent, and also not only do we have more pieces, they are like attacking more squares because the knight was blockading a lot of pieces. He is doing a good job of blockading, and once you get rid of it, then...
So this again sounds to me like one of those times where, you and I have spoken about this a lot, where the beginner has to be careful not to just make moves based on principles. There's more to it than just principles.
To be honest,
if I say,
I have to stop you for a moment,
yeah,
because your question is based on principles, but we didn't analyze the position. We analyzed the principle. So,
right.
What's the concrete line that you have to check when you?
Yeah, because I'm just looking to do two things. I want to try to hold on to the bishop pair if I can, and I want to avoid double pawns if I can. That's my thinking at a low level, right, at a 1300 level. And you're saying, well,
okay, when you play bishop f3, you allow 2 captures that are more concrete than knight takes f4. 2 captures that are winning material, not the bishop pair.
Well, there's knight on c3.
Yeah.
I mean, the c3.
Yeah. And what's the second capture? So knight takes c3
and then a capture on e5.
That doesn't win material.
You're seeing another move right now on this turn, not after knight takes.
Yeah.
I don't see another move that wins material. That's something I must be missing. You're saying, no, there's something that I don't see it. I don't see the other move.
In this position?
Yeah.
It's queen takes c3.
Oh, that's what you meant. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I said to capture.
No, you're 100% right. Yeah. It wouldn't have crossed my mind to take with the queen. But yeah, you're right. It has to be looked at intelligently.
So first we check the most concrete move. Queen takes c3. So what happens now? The queen is hanging for white. So how do you deal with it? Remember I said checks captures and threats.
Right.
The only relevant of the three is queen takes c3.
Right.
I mean, I can check these kind of things, but they don't help because I lose the queen. So I'm taking, you take, and my rook is attacked. The most obvious move. Okay, I can check these kind of moves, and if you look deeply, you will see that one of them could work without losing material. At least.
You mean knight takes?
Yeah.
Knight takes f7 should be able to work.
Yeah, because then I'm
Then
threatening rook
yeah,
d6.
of course. And the
The
rook.
critical line being
Knight takes.
d1,
Knight takes.
d8, bishop f4, e4. The knight is hanging.
Yeah.
And this position, at least optically, looks like it favors white. Okay, you're threatening this pawn. Let's say I move it. Then this pawn is under some pressure. This pawn is under pressure and it's a weakness. And I'm bringing
The rook is going to
very
come
easily,
over
so I'm
to
leading
any of the open files. Yeah.
I'm leading by development. So this line, while being shallow, we can at least eliminate queen c3 as a potential threat. Like, okay, maybe there is a better solution, but if once we find a solution that's good enough, we can stop the calculation and approve bishop f3 before playing it. Then if knight takes c3, we have the same tactic, I guess.
Sure.
Knight takes f7 with this double
Right.
attack and this double attack.
Okay.
And yeah, I think it should favor white. We open the position, we are leading by development. We keep exchanging pieces and creating weaknesses while maintaining our lead in development. So after bishop f3, black is thinking. To be honest, I really like white's position right now. Many people in the chat requested to analyze knight takes f7, some claiming that it wins. I don't know why so many people are thrilled about it. It can only suggest that at least one of them checked with an engine, because I don't think anyone in its own in the right mind will say, "Oh, knight f7 wins."
Well, except that one of the people who suggested it is Yoav Milikov, and really is the kind of move that he would make.
I agree.
I've seen him do it so many times.
But having so many people suggesting it,
and
someone claiming that it wins.
Yeah. No, generally speaking, I've noticed when people say on the chat, "This wins,"
it's not a guess.
Yeah, it's not a guess. But if Yoav Milikov says knight takes f7,
question mark.
It's not. Yeah, it's not that he's asking, does it win? It's that it's literally his intuitive move, and I've seen him do this so many times, and I've seen his opponents just like fall apart, just like melt into their chair, looking at this tiny little blonde 14-year-old kid, and he's like mean over the board. He is. Have you seen him? He just like sits there like with his mean face, like just like sitting there, and then his opponent just like falls apart. And well, anyway. Yoav is the Milikov family are good friends of ours, or neighbors of mine, and I have a soft spot for those kids. I think they're really just
very
adorable.
You reminded me of my childhood.
But anyhow, so let's take a look at
so many
knight
good
f7.
memories.
Yeah.
Now I understand why I enjoyed watching Dexter. So knight takes f7, knight takes d8 or d6 is a big threat, essentially forcing black to recapture with the king. Knight takes f4 is another option though, because knight d8 is met with knight d2, intermediate check. But even though black has two pieces for a rook, white will gain another piece because of the pin. So it will be an exchange up. So after knight f7, knight f4 fails. What about king f7? The most critical move. So the logical continuation, based on what we spoke about earlier, when you calculate, first thing you check is a check.
Checks. Yeah.
And this is the check that you want to see, not queen g6. So black normally moves backwards, doesn't want to move his king upwards and to the middle of the board. And now probably bishop takes h6 is an idea. Probably. I don't know. But it allows queen takes c3, so doesn't feel right. So maybe bishop takes d6 and c4. but then this bishop is slightly hanging. It's hard to tell, but this is what I feel to be the line, like c4, because the knight is pinned and the king is a little bit weak, so if you play knight b4 and try to save your piece, then after queen g6 I'm creating these mating threats that don't allow you to defend your rook.
And I can't play knight e3, nachon.
Knight e3 here?
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Just
After all these, no, takes, and the queen
takes here,
and yeah. Oh, because I can just take back.
With the queen, yeah, or with
with the bishop.
I can take with the queen, with the
or
rook.
with the queen.
Or with the rook.
Well, no, if you take with the rook, then the because you're threatening mate.
Yeah, there is. Actually, I'm not. I didn't even see it was hanging.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. No, but you can. But if I take.
But I even have this. Speaking of moves that I don't see.
Yeah.
Queen takes d1.
Yeah.
Later. So yeah. No, but this looks like a good way for white to play in. So let's look at it a little bit more deeply. I think they played knight takes f4. Yeah, knight f5.
Knight f4 has been played
in this position. I think white is slightly better, but let's fully check knight f7. King takes f7. Bishop h5 check. The reason I'm not starting with this is knight b4, and now I don't have the bishop h5 check because of the queen. So I start with bishop h5 check in this position. Sorry, here. And after the king moves wherever, I'm just taking the bishop and playing c4. And if I'm okay, let's say bishop d7, trying to finish the development, then I don't think this wins for.
No, I can't, because he just pins the queen. I mean, skewers the,
Yeah. So still not sure, not exactly sure what's the idea. C takes d5, bishop takes a4, and queen a2, d5. Doesn't feel like white wins to me, because the bishop is hanging and everything. So knight f7, king f7. We have another move. ef4, bishop e5. I don't see the win.
With king f7.
Let's see if
I mean with knight f7.
Let's see if anyone in the chat. People are saying that their engines suggest it's equal, so I don't know. Like
yeah, I don't know. Like
So many people were curious about this move. Some claim that it's winning, but at least I cannot see why it wins. So and from practical standpoint, we still don't know whether Caruana is out of prep. He has an hour and 35 on the clock.
Right.
If we try to delve into Carlsen's perspective, then we can like understand that knight f7 probably doesn't win for two reasons. One, we don't see the win, and two, Caruana wouldn't enter a losing position by playing quickly with his home prep. And thirdly, that's also important, if he doesn't win, it might lose when you sack a piece. And bishop f3 looks so good. It just follows every principle that we know of. Because this pawn is not really hanging, as mentioned.
Right.
We're bringing another piece, we're creating a threat. After knight f4, we are having some form of a lead in development. Bishop e5 was played. I assume now that white considers rook takes d8, but I would just take on e5. But probably black's idea is to play bishop d7 now. And b7 is not that hanging because bishop takes a4 is coming.
It's not that hanging.
It's just a little bit hanging.
It's sort of hanging.
This is not that hanging. It's like it's replaceable. I'm inventing new chess terminology.
Yeah, we've invented several words.
Yeah.
We invented
enjoyability.
Enjoyability. Yesterday we invented enjoyability.
Hangability.
Hangability.
Yeah. So b7
and slightly hanging.
b7 is not fully hangful.
Not fully hang. But wait a minute, because after bishop takes, rook takes, rook takes. No.
Bishop takes, bishop takes.
Yeah.
And I'm creating these threads.
I understand, but then rook takes.
And my rook is no longer hanging.
I understand, but now, equal
material. This is a weakness. This is an outside passed pawn. White is not better.
The outside passed pawn.
And black is leading by development.
So help me understand why black's outside passed pawn is stronger than white's c3 pawn. Because that's the sort of thing that I never, ever comprehend.
Okay. So let's just make a positional exchange here. And talk about this situation. Okay. I'm going to create a very shallow exchange of pieces. Please ignore it, the stupidity of it, but I'll just put the pieces here. So let's put the king here.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
Now I get it. Yeah.
Okay. So
now
the
it makes
term
sense.
outside pass pawn comes from this kind of
Yeah,
situation.
now I see it, sure.
This is an outside pass pawn. This is passed pawn that's closer to the
So
kings.
it's the center or whatever.
So you cannot promote this pawn by force. White cannot promote his pawn by force. But the main advantage of an outside passer is that once you exchange these pawns, let's say a random sequence of moves once again, if you were to okay, let's put this on the board and this. So once you exchange these pawns, black's king is closer to the other side and he will pick up more pawns.
So I want to make sure I understand this because, again, this is the sort of thing that beginners like myself, these are those endgame principles that we talked about a lot yesterday that are so horribly neglected. What you're saying is the value of an outside passed pawn over a central passed pawn is that by the time I get my king all the way out there to trade it down, my king now will not have the time to get back before the opponent's king has started gobbling up my pawn structure.
Yeah, and the same applies for pieces, by the way. It's easier to support an outside passed pawn, and it's easier to defend against this kind of a pawn because you can have your pieces in the center doing a lot of attacking tasks. Let's go back to a more relevant position.
Sure.
So let's say here. So even if we don't exchange pieces, my queen can stand on c5 and have my rook, let's say, on d3 and my bishop on c6, doing their own thing, you know, just playing in the center, attacking the king and the king side and the center, and they're still blockading the c pawn without even trying. But blockading the a pawn means you have to put your pieces on the side
all the
of
way
the
to the
board.
edge of the board. Okay, now I'm beginning to understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So either in the middle game or in the end game, an outside passed pawn is easier to support and more difficult to block while doing other things. In the king's case, it's reaching the other end. In the middle game case, it's attacking the other squares of the board, which is the center and the other wing.
And so this kind of reminds me of a lesson that we had where, again, I mentioned this yesterday also, where you said the more you know about the end game, the less likely you are to make certain kinds of mistakes in the middle game. Because I would go into that variation after calculating it and feeling like, well, you know, I kind of simplified the position. I'm not worse. And what you're saying is, yeah, you think you're not worse because your knowledge of the end game, which is not going to happen for another 25 or 30 moves, allows you to get all the way down to this outside passer. And once that happens, well, now you're in mortal danger.
Yeah. That's more or less right.
That's the basic lesson here.
Yeah, the reason I'm saying more or less is because I don't really know the official reason, and I'm just making it up as we speak.
Christian Candia asks, "Is 1330 a typo? Should it be 2330?" No, it's not a typo. I really am a 1330.
Just to be clear, Joseph's Israeli rating is.
It's a little bit,
1500 and something.
yeah, it's a little bit higher, but the fact is, no, I really am a beginner.
And I have to mention that Israeli rating is underrated when it comes to compare it, I think, with the US rating and most of the other systems, right?
Well, I mean, I suppose so, but I think the simple reality is that by any objective standard, I'm a beginner player who is looking to learn the game and we should probably mention this every like hour or so because the audience changes. The whole idea that we had was
let them explain it to each other.
Well, okay, that we could explain it to them, but the idea was for the teacher to teach and for the lower ranked, the lower skilled player to actually learn something. And I feel like I really learned something because now I learned that if you don't avoid certain kinds of variations in the middle game and you give your opponent an outside passer, by the time you realize you're losing, you're lost. And it's an avoidable mistake.
Yeah.
It's a reason to reject an entire variation.
That's why you rejected FE, because of bishop d7. And bishop b7, as we just saw, is not good enough.
Right.
So we took here first. So that after FE and bishop d7, a4 is not hanging and he can capture without the hangability.
Without the hangability of the other pawn. Okay.
Without having a handful of issues.
A handful.
Yeah. So, still probably okay for black, but a pawn is a pawn. So I feel like at least white can kind of defend.
Sort of sneak something out of there, yeah.
Kind of defend.
But he is defending.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not over the board, but this position is, and now FE is forced. I assume he's already played it, but for some reason we are waiting. And then the logical move will be queen c7 because it protects b7 while exerting pressure on white's weaknesses and preparing this bishop d7, our famous maneuver.
Sure.
Maybe Matan will be back to chess after this game.
Come back. I have a reason. So wait a minute. I just want to make sure this is the current position on the board.
Yes.
Plus 2 moves.
This is the current position of the board.
That's the current position of the board.
This is called a 1 move. In a
plus plus 2 ply. Yeah.
So
and this is what we're expecting. In other words, there's no reason why we should.
Overton learns from what I teach here. Yeah, he searches for opponents for blitz as he's watching us.
That's exactly what you should be doing. Well, no, using the Baron blitz system is not to be taken lightly.
Which is different from my method.
Yes.
The system is the application of the method.
Of the method, absolutely. Well, that's just the definition of the words. But it's good that you know that. Okay, let's just refresh the board again because I really.
It's already refreshed on the other screen and it's the same. It took on e5. So okay, this is the position in the game. And Carlsen is down to 30 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say we're looking at a circumstance that is the reverse of what we saw yesterday, where
Queen c7 was played.
Queen c7 was played as expected, and we're looking at a situation where 20 moves prior to the time control, one of the players is down to a half of an hour. Is down to the point where he has just around 1 minute plus an increment to make 20, to make each move, which is an unattractive position to be in. It's certainly an undesirable position to be in. And my question to you, as a beginner player, is how do I avoid that? Because I've gotten in time trouble. I've gotten in horrible time trouble many times.
You play blitz.
You play blitz, and by playing blitz, and no, I know that's the answer, and that I think it's. By playing blitz, you start to force yourself
and
to...
rapid. I keep adding and rapid, yeah. So.
But what about during the actual game? So I'm in an actual tournament. Playing an actual...
There's a famous quote to answer it. So someone from the Soviet chess school, I don't know who's the origin, but they said that someone who reaches time trouble regularly is usually an indicator of poor chess education or poor chess culture, is how they said it in Hebrew to me.
Okay.
And the meaning is, okay, it's not correct in all cases, because we have Sasha Grishuk, who's obviously more educated than probably 100% of the people watching my stream. But he
openly admitted in an interview that he has a kind of ADD, and he actually kind of needs the time pressure to bring him back to the board. He said in an interview that if it's just somewhere in the middle game, he's in outer space a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
So I think we can sort of cut Grishuk off that list.
Yeah.
I'm talking, but like you said, you're talking about guys like me who actually genuinely don't have a chess education, and you're saying that's because of
there are even grandmasters like that. I mean, who have this issue because they are more of a tactician or an opening expert, or you can say practical player, but don't have the education in the classical sense of the word. Because if you know the right direction to play, and you know that you don't have to find the best move, then there's no reason for you to reach time pressure. If you can play relatively good games with 20 minutes on the clock in rapid tournaments, there's no reason that you will reach the last 5 minutes
before reaching 40 moves.
When you have an hour and a half with an increment.
Right.
So the only reason that people think so much is because they can and because they hesitate. Another famous quote, I think, is by John Nunn in his book Secrets of Practical Chess Strategy, if I'm not wrong, which is a really good book, by the way. I recommend it to intermediate players.
Okay.
And wants to improve even at 2400 players. So what he said there is that if you think for more than 10 minutes, that usually means that you're doing something wrong. If you think for more than 10 minutes on a single move, when the topic is to make a decision and not necessarily to calculate all the way. Yeah. If you have a long calculation, it's a critical moment. You can think for 20 minutes, but in most cases, people who think for more than 10 minutes, on average, make worse moves than if they already took their hand and
just
moved
blasted
the piece.
out the first intuitive move.
Not the first intuitive move, but let's say that their potential decision after 8 minutes.
Oh, I see.
Or after 10 minutes.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
That's like, I can't really fully explain it, but the more you think after this threshold of 10 minutes, the more likely you are to make a really silly move. That's just what happens in practice. So, and obviously, you're going to have less time. That's not good. So, I recommend to take, time management is very important in chess and in life, and the way to address it, at least in chess, is to be aware of the fact that you need to divide your time properly. So, for example, if you have an hour and a half, you can take 45 minutes for the first 20 moves, because you play the opening relatively quickly. So if you have less than 45 minutes, which is half of your time, before you reach move 20, you're really on the track for time pressure.
So you have a warning well in advance.
It's like, it's not even a warning. That's already a bad situation.
Or you've already failed.
Yeah,
you're saying. Okay.
Because you make first 5 moves more or less quickly.
Sure.
You have 15 moves to be making after, and you have 45 minutes to make 15 moves, and then you have 45 minutes to make 20 critical moves. So the critical moment usually doesn't arrive before move 20 if you're not making huge mistakes in the opening. So if you play relatively properly, so taking on these 15 moves between 2 to 3 minutes on average, or if you have some extra time to take 10 minutes on the 10 extra minutes on some random moment that you feel is worth the investment, then it's okay. But remember, the chess is first and foremost a game of making decisions and not a game of perfection. And
is that really what it comes down to? Do you think a lot of the overthinking that players do is just perfectionism?
It could be
trying to solve
confidence. It could be like, okay, you have to pick between two things. Many times in life, let's say, it's easier for me to show an example from a restaurant. Let's say I have 2 options to pick. And I'm sitting next to a person that I only have like an hour to spend with. I haven't seen this person for a while. I really want to spend my time talking and listening and hearing out what this person has to say. But instead, many people spend 5 minutes on the menu trying to decide what to order.
Right.
But it doesn't really matter as long as it's good enough. And the menu is not the main thing, I hope. So what I try to do in this metaphor is just make a decision and just follow through by just being in the moment, whether it's a chess move to be making or something I want to talk about, or just relaxing. Either way, making a decision is
assuming normal moves, obviously. Assuming
of course,
reasonable
of
moves.
Course.
Yeah.
There is a famous, relatively famous TED talk about it on YouTube. It's called the paradox of choice.
Okay.
And many people have investigated this topic. It's well researched, and in our world, that's the main issue nowadays. We have so much choice that no matter what we choose, we have remorse.
Sure.
And people say that the ideal situation is to have up to 3 options. And I think it's more or less the same with chess. When you have more than 3 candidate moves, that's when you're being inefficient.
Okay.
And
so all those times that I've been over the board and had 5 candidate moves,
you have to eliminate them quickly.
You're telling me that's not real thinking. That's
Rook
not
B1.
real calculate. Rook B1. We talked about the fact that the
Now it predicts Rook B8 to try to release the bishop.
Right. We said that the rook on F1 is likely to make its way to either D1 or B1. I think that's kind of obvious since the B7 pawn is in so much trouble at the moment. Well, it is highly pressurized at the moment, but going back to my question, I know that generally speaking, I try to follow the principles that you've taught me. What is my opponent's threat? Okay, there's no threat. Now I try to look at the next question, which is, which piece is the least active? There are times when I don't really see any one piece being any less active than the other pieces. Yeah. And I start looking for candidate moves, and suddenly my thinking process over the board, I start getting lists of possible moves, and then I just start drowning in variations. So you're saying 3 candidate moves, period.
I'll show you an example.
Okay.
Remember, it's not only the candidate moves, it's also the time management. Remember we analyzed this earlier?
Sure.
After CD5, the incorrect transmission?
Sure.
We looked at knight C3. It took us around 2 minutes to talk about checks, captures, threats.
Right.
And then see the different options. See that rook d5 loses to queen takes e4.
Right.
You know how much time in my mind, or the average grandmaster's mind, it takes to realize that knight c3 is the candidate move? Just like we made, this 2 minutes happens in more or less, I would say, between 1 and 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things that I said are not happening verbally in my mind. I was trying to translate it.
No, of course,
but
of course.
Subconsciously, we disqualify, eliminate rook takes d5. And we say to ourselves that e5 is normal. And the knight c3 is critical. And in our mind, we're already checking knight takes c3 less than 2 seconds after seeing the move c takes d5. Okay, and then it's obvious that we need to eliminate this, which takes another 2 to 3 seconds.
Okay.
To see knight takes d1 check and stop with the line. And then b takes c3 is the move that comes to mind. Queen c3 doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
So reaching this position in the calculation and concluding that black is probably fine, when considering c takes d5, let's say as white, takes about 20 seconds.
Okay.
And you can practice this kind of way of thinking. And
that was going to be my next question. What happens for those of us that can't do it in 20 seconds?
You do it in 2 minutes, you do it in 5 minutes.
Sure, but what's the way? How do we improve?
Or you do less things. You try to find moves that are good enough.
Okay.
So c takes d5. Okay, in 20 seconds you decide that castle is a better move.
Sure.
But the thing is that even if you play c takes d5, you're still fine. But don't take too much time thinking about it, and keep practicing not the quality of your thinking, but the speed of your logical thinking. So as long as you maintain a reasonable amount of logic while you're having a decent speed of going through different variations, that's when you're gonna find moves that are good enough.
Okay.
At a good enough pace.
And that goes back to the question of not only time management, but of perfectionism. You're saying if you can continue to play good enough moves at a good enough pace, you're far better served than spending 45 minutes to find a perfect move, and then end up in some sort of horrific time trouble that will never. This is practical advice.
Yeah, that's true. And these are the advices that mean the most, because I can give you tons of theoretical advices about how to train, how to improve, how to be efficient.
Sure.
And I don't do the same things myself because it's like almost inhuman
Yeah.
to keep up with these standards.
Yeah.
And just like we spoke about Lasker's quote yesterday, if you see a good move, find a better one. When, how did you say it? When stretched to the extreme,
You'll never make a move.
yeah.
That was Ilya Smirin, by the way, who said that to me. We were talking one time. We were both playing at a tournament, obviously different sections, but we were talking outside, and he said it just sounds like such a ridiculous thing to say because, yeah, sure, okay, keep looking for better moves until what? Till the clock runs out? I mean, till till you die of hunger? I mean, when? When do you stop? And and he said, I think if you found a practical move, a solid move, move.
Yeah, that's true.
By the way, the board is flipped. We could flip it back, I guess.
Let's flip it back.
Oh, why not? We'll flip it.
I like it from this side. My pieces are developed. Okay, anticipate rook b8. Actually, it's easier to make rook b8 with black. But let's see why he's thinking. Because rook b8 seems obvious to me. What could he possibly consider? Or what could he be afraid of? Or why? I don't know what's coming next. I guess bishop d7 is obvious. And I really don't see a way for white to challenge that so much. Maybe queen e4 trying to, but still bishop d7 attacks this pawn. So no, there is literally no move for white to seriously challenge black. Probably something along the lines of c4 and c5, and then exchanging something about that. But then bishop c6. So
in the current position, Great Jensen has a question. He would like to know why can't
rook
black
b8 was played, I think.
just take the pawn?
Yeah, and Caruana
I'm not quite sure I understand
follows
the
my
question.
advice. Why did he not take the pawn on
Just
e5?
take the pawn on queen e5.
Well, maybe this is what he was considering, because I mentioned rook b8 to be an obvious move because I didn't think queen e5 is necessary.
Because then takes.
But something I didn't mention is that Caruana, he has this natural, let's say, is leaning towards capturing pawn whenever is possible. So he's
A natural materialist.
yeah, this is how he used to be growing up. And this is how I see his play when we played Blitz and Bullet in the past. He loves capturing pawns even if it's dangerous, but he's so strong at defending that he can he's not threatened like risking him to die with full stomach. He's probably gonna live and humiliate my king, let's say.
Right.
At least.
And so your point is that after queen e5, bishop b7, rook b7.
So
what?
The reason I mentioned all this is because rook b8, while obvious to me and equal, Caruana wants to verify that queen e5 doesn't work because he's not afraid to calculate it. And bishop b7 fails to this back rank mate on e1. Yeah?
Right.
So I guess white had an idea. So probably something with the queen to the d file to prevent bishop d7, and then if you go back, then I go rook d1 and prevent bishop d7 even more. So, and prepare queen d8 perhaps, and white is definitely not worse in this position. So, and that's my guess. So rook b8 I think is correct either way. And I predict a draw to take place sooner or later in this position. I hope Caruana will have good winning chances after what Carlsen did to us and to me personally last night. Unfortunately, there is no dancing lesson, so that's why I think they will finish faster this time. And then it's funny, many people asked whether I made it to the lesson, but not which type of dance it is. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
I don't even know which kind of dance it is.
Yeah.
Is it tango?
I didn't even ask, I just said, oh, it's dancing. Let's sign up. No, it's called lambada. but it's combined with something called zouk. So it's called lamba zouk, and that's quite a rare type of a dance. And I noticed that most people there are programmers and mathematicians and kind of people who are very educated, which says something about a particular dance. So it takes some brains. That's why I think it can help me with my chess maybe one day. And yeah, there is a increasing community that's not so small in Israel for the past 12 years in this section.
This particular
dance, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And speaking of dancing, we have a fight of maneuvering ahead of us. I predict a rook endgame.
Is that right? You predict a rook endgame?
Yeah.
You don't say.
I don't think Caruana will return the favor though. I think he will just offer the draw if he gets there. And maybe Carlsen, as the weaker side, will be like, I'm gonna make myself fight.
Somebody asked
will not
earlier,
eat.
I just wanted to find the name of the person who asked it, but somebody asked earlier whether you would consider this to be time trouble for Carlsen.
Well, for Caruana, maybe. For Carlsen, it's not so difficult. You see, he's already made a move. He didn't even take too much time. He took more or less a minute.
He took his increment. Yeah, about a minute.
Took a minute to make a move. Played queen d3 very confidently. We can anticipate bishop d7. And, well, I'm guessing he will play a5 in that case, because the pawn was hanging, and it's not really hanging here because of the bishop.
Obviously.
So bishop c6, and then one way or another. So we will read some rook endgame. This is one example that could take place, and a draw will probably take place sooner or later. This is a little bit risky. Don't know if he's in time or not. Something like that. I have no idea what I'm looking at.
I was gonna say, I mean, you know, these kinds of rook and pawn endgames, like I said yesterday, is something I feel I have absolutely no.
This feels good for. I mean, white is not losing probably because I'm threatening to capture here. You have to react and then c5, and just to make an example, something like this. White will not lose this position. h4, and if you ever are coming after this pawn, I will check and get something there.
Pawns in the back. Okay.
So that's just a random example of rook endgame that could take place in the game. I wonder if Caruana is considering anything other than bishop d7. Maybe b6 and bishop b7, but that's already not so challenging. Now a5 as well, exchanging pawns, and then it's definitely going to be a draw. So I don't know what I'm struggling for, because I'm trying to look for potential for either player to play for something, but black is so solid. Oh, I think bishop d7 was played and a5 was played, so good job on my part with the prediction. I think I read once that the average grandmaster could guess up to 80 or 90% of the top players' moves, but it's the one move in every 10 or 15 that makes the difference. Yeah, it's usually just one mistake or one practical chance. Like it's not
during the
recap.
Yeah, during the recap yesterday, you were saying that
a3.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Let's show the viewers, for those who don't know what I'm talking about or don't remember, before all the dancing began or ended, if we speak from my perspective.
60 something, wasn't it?
No, it's not here, it's here, 50.
Hmm.
So here, yesterday on round 1, Caruana played the move a3, which is the best in the position, and We analyzed a lot of concrete moves. We didn't even considering a3.
That's right. We didn't even think about thinking about it. And you were saying in the recap that's that sort of critical move where the difference between the two is between the grandmaster and the the top player.
Yeah. How come there is a long delay between the live stream and my update? Asks Gretchen.
Great Jensen.
Great Jensen. I was close. So I'm not sure what exactly you mean by delay, because I'm not aware of the mainstream, and I might get sued if I will. So as far as I know,
yeah, we're not legally allowed to stream.
I think.
Okay, we're not willing to take the legal risk of streaming the actual official stream, because there is a company that claims ownership of that stream. Yeah. That would be just like if we were commentating on a football game.
Yeah.
If you commentate on the football game using the stream that the television is using, you're subject to copyright.
Yeah.
To copyright violations and lawsuits and everything else. So we're just streaming from Lichess.
And well, good luck finding the Lichess owners or I don't know, admins, and asking them, addressing the same question.
That might be something that they agreed to.
But I don't know. Yeah.
That might have been the delay might be something that they agreed to. That was certainly what happened last year.
Yeah.
Where they said, well, we get to live stream it. We own the copyright, the broadcasting rights, etc. And you guys don't get to stream it for at least X amount of time after that. That was exactly what they agreed to. That's what
football or what?
No. That's what Playchess.com's streaming of the game was delayed by like a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And they couldn't have the clock times. For some reason, those are the two things that they agreed to.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to watch the game on Playchess.com, you had to know you weren't going to see the clocks and the moves were going to be delayed by 2 minutes. And the only way to watch live right now streaming was to purchase the official streaming.
I have another idea for the T-shirt.
For the candidates match. That's what it was.
Remember the idea for the T-shirt from yesterday? I didn't write it down, but the idea that just came to my mind right now is someone like having a picture of Carlsen Caruana.
Yeah.
It's like you see beautiful clocks like next to the stream, and someone's like, Thousand Joseph's commentary is good enough, but I'm paying to see the clocks. Something like this. I just paid to see the clocks. I'm here for the clocks.
I'm here for the clocks.
Yeah.
Nishan Tharu would like to know what you would do in this position. That's actually what I was about to ask you. But instead of telling me what you would do in this position, would you tell me how to work through thinking through this position? Because that's,
Okay, let's start from A5 was obvious to me.
Yeah, well, we talked about why. That is pretty clear.
Would you play A5 here?
I would like to believe that I would, because I see that the pawn is hanging.
And you see that it's not hanging
that
here.
Queen takes bishop.
And strategically, it also blockades the b pawn from progressing, which is now the only weakness in Black's camp. And now, after the logical follow-up, bishop c6 and takes, if you're not careful, you're going to be left with weaknesses. So you want to exchange pieces and get to a drawn endgame before too late.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I picked this line, because now Black is forced either to passivity or to exchange of queens. Even rook c8 is not so good for him because the b pawn is hanging, or this is passive. So, and after the exchange, I'm just in time, because here I don't play c5, I play a6, threatening rook takes b7 and winning, and forcing you to play b6, and only then I play c5. And again, b5 fails to c6, and then I'm in time to exchange. And a7, just barely making it in time to exchange the pawns and get to an equal endgame. And yeah, so that's the line I like for white. Where were we? So the game position is, I think,
After
a5.
Oh,
after
no.
a5, yeah. That's correct. We have this orange thing that marks the game position, you see? I only now realize it.
Yeah, I didn't notice that either.
I noticed it subconsciously, but only now I'm capable of like saying it out loud. Oh. Okay, so here a5. Someone is saying that it's not equal than the position I was calculating. So let me try to prove him wrong. So c4, a6, c5 takes here. So let me quote PG Godlike 4 says it's not equal, the d6 pawn would be captured, the white king is nowhere near. So the line I provided earlier was h4 and not to get mated on the back rank. And now the reason I think it is equal is because you cannot capture d6 with the king, but if you ever try to come with a rook to anywhere that leaves the back rank, the 7th rank, then I will immediately
give check and start gobbling up pawns in the
give
back.
check. So black in a sense is condemned to some sort of passivity, and the way I see it, there is no way to make progress. So of course black is on the strong side. Actually, I have to correct myself. f4 is a bit more precise to prevent e5. I didn't know this e5 was an idea.
And it still prevents the back rank mate, your point is, but it also achieves the second thing.
Yeah. So I don't see a way for black to force white into a really bad version of the rook endgame, because okay, he can save his pawns from being lost by playing moves like g5, let's say an f5 or whatever. Let's say play g3, you play f6 or f5. You can exchange some pawns, but still these pawns will be weak, and even if you win this pawn, I will still have some counterplay. It should be enough for a draw. That's at least how I think. But it's a risk. It's not 100% draw. Let's call it 95%. However, I'll take it with white because otherwise I feel like risking quite a lot. So let's see. a5 and black is still thinking. Fabi is thinking. Someone is saying in the chat, I have more confidence than Fabian Carlsen. Which I think is very, very good for you. Yes. It's like, I wonder, how can you apply it?
I'm going to try to pronounce this this name correctly, and then maybe we can go back to the I think it's Ibolat Dusenachmetov, which sounds like is that a Azeri name? That's an Azeri name. Let me know if that's true, if you are in fact from Azerbaijan, just out of curiosity.
It could also be from one of those countries that are ex-USSR that are...
well, that's right, but yeah, but I'm thinking specifically of Azerbaijan.
I forgot the name. No, but there are other countries that have the same Finnish...
Like Turkmenistan.
Yeah, and all those, and Uzbekistan and all... Kazakhstan, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay, thank you for letting us know. And
I said Kazakhstan? Yeah, that was my next guess.
And he wants to go back and ask about whether, and I had actually intended on asking the same question, about bishop d7 when you were suggesting rook b8, and you were saying how, you know, you felt rook b8 was best, but I was going to ask you about bishop d7.
Queen c4 is probably better than my move. I didn't see it. It pins the bishop and it prepares bishop takes c6.
Yeah.
Probably like putting an end to the godlike hopes that were posed to us before.
Yeah. Do you remember the position before rook? Yeah, let's just go back before rook b8. So after rook b1.
I don't have to remember because I have arrows. Yes.
So the question here is what about bishop d7 here? And you kind of just shrugged it off really quickly. And that would be why. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bad. Okay, yeah, good.
Yeah. I love it when in chess you can communicate without saying anything. Sometimes.
I'm assuming that's the position he meant. I hope I'm not. I hope we didn't just answer a question he didn't ask. Wait a minute. He says there's checkmate. Are we missing something?
In the line that we mentioned?
Yeah.
Let's go back.
After rook b1. Before rook b1. Yeah.
Here?
Yeah. You're saying after rook takes.
Ah, queen e5. Ah, that's the idea. I missed it.
Mm.
I guess I can play h4. I'm still attacking the bishop. I have an active rook. The bishop moves wherever. I can take here and attack a8 toward the least. So I don't get checkmated after h4, and I'm creating various threats. So yeah. Any other gods that have questions? That was a rhetorical question.
We should. We shouldn't.
Yeah.
I know when I work with Boris, I work with Boris Avruch, and he's also from Kazakhstan, and he said originally, and he said that the standard of chess there is so through the roof that it's actually kind of hard to imagine. So we shouldn't be surprised that a Kazakh player is coming at us with a move that we missed. With high level stuff. Yeah, it's not a surprise at all. But somebody asked, do you see a slight drop off in Carlsen's overall level of play?
I do not. And there you have it.
Well, there it is. That's the thing about yes or no questions. You don't see that.
No.
That was, by the way, that was BBRR who asked that question. And you're saying you don't see it. You think the correction in rating and so on and so forth was an inevitability, etc., etc.
I disagree with BBRR.
Ah.
And in this position, Queen C4. No, he didn't claim anything. He just asked if.
No, yeah, you can't disagree with it.
So, I disagree with what the question implies. So, in my opinion, Carlsen's level is hard to measure. So, even if it did drop or if it went higher, it goes like game by game. It's not something that's general, and it's also not something that anyone can really measure. You can just look at the amount of mistakes that he's making, but the opposition is very tough. They don't, like, I feel like in a way you should create this kind of tournament where different top players have a slightly better position to begin with against each other, and then they start collecting points. And then you see which is the better player, defending which is the better player
I see what you mean.
At creating chances. But like right now, with all this theory and the equal positions, I mean, how can you judge? I mean, the engine versus engine, or Carlsen versus engine made a draw. How can you say that he's playing badly? I'm not saying that Caruana is an engine, of course, but the fact that he was
but it is engine preparation 20 moves deep.
Yeah, he was out preparing Carlsen in a line that is relatively concrete. And I mean, there is a famous quote by a famous commentator who commented at very few tournaments, but still has a lot of room in the chess community's heart. What to do? What to do now? There is nothing to do about it. Like there is the engines, there is the preparation, and to be frank, I have a student who was playing more than 70 games at once in it's called internet chess. It used to be referred to as correspondence chess.
Sure.
So he plays with an engine when you have a few days per move. His name is Harel El Yosef. and he's very good at it. Puts a lot of effort into.
We should say engines are allowed in correspondence chess. Just to be harder. It's a completely different set of rules.
Yeah. So while he puts a lot of effort into any aspect of this game, including hiring grandmasters to help investigating the openings and outsmart the computer, of which I'm one of them. So I have to admit that there is nothing that white can do to gain an advantage in any opening.
Mm-hmm.
But you can always find ideas, you can always find different directions that the opponent might not resolve. And for that matter, it's important to understand that for you to win in a chess game, queen d6, you need your opponent to make a mistake and not yourself to play well.
Right.
And that's a little mindset or mind switch that I want the viewers to be able to perceive, is that in chess you cannot increase your advantage. You can objectively only maintain your position. So let me try to use an example.
You're saying you only gain an advantage by capitalizing on your opponent's
just a matter of
errors.
definition. So here, this position. Okay, let me give a silly example. Okay, so g3. Let's say that black plays a random move like a6, and that white is just learn the rules and he blunder the bishop. Okay, so this is black to move. If you play bishop takes f3, you're winning. If you don't, then you're not winning.
Right.
Let's make it even more clear. I'll put the queen on c8 for that matter, just so that we don't have any extra options for black. So we have this position, and now white played queen d4. Either you win or you don't win.
Sure.
Okay. So if you turn on an engine right now, and I will for just for the sake of the argument, just to show the viewers what I mean, is that I think I can press here. So now it will show me a line. It says -6 with bishop takes f3 or 0 with the best move rook a8.
Right.
Or b6. Okay? So the evaluation of this position in front of us is -6. Okay? This is -6.
Mm-hmm.
The evaluation after the correct move bishop takes f3 is still -6. So
right.
you can how do you say it? You can maintain your advantage, preserve your advantage, but you cannot increase it by making the right move. You can only maintain
in other words,
it.
What you're saying is, as a mathematical statement,
yes,
is that if the computer assessment is -6, that is the maximum, and all you can do is attain that.
Not the computer. Let's call it the objective evaluation.
The objective evaluation.
Computers
There's no way to go beyond that.
Yeah.
And the point that you're making is therefore that the only thing you can ever really do is capitalize on your opponent's errors. There's no winning.
I don't like this way of phrasing it. You're not capitalizing on a mistake. You're preserving the evaluation.
Okay.
The opponent is making mistakes, and then you are preserving the advantage that he created for you.
Okay.
So
maybe refresh the.
Yeah, that's a position.
This is a position on the board.
Yeah. Queen takes d6, he takes d6. So in a sense, you can maintain whatever evaluation you already have, and your opponent can make mistakes, and vice versa. You can lose by making mistakes, but your opponent cannot win by playing well, by definition. So there are no winning moves in chess, just moves that preserve the evaluation and moves that lose, in a way.
You know who? You know it's interesting because Smirin said something very similar. He just used it slightly different phrasing. He said what they called a brilliancy 100 years ago. Nowadays we just call that an accurate response
or a tactic.
Yeah, we just call that an like as if to say what you did is just the correct response.
Yeah.
Whereas back then they saw it as some extraordinary achievement.
Yeah.
It was, quote, a good move. And what you're saying is, no, it's the correct move. Anything less than that is just going to give you less.
Yeah. So another mind shift that I want to share with you. We talked about evaluation. Now let's talk about everyone's rage, the clocks.
Yeah.
The clock, people like referring to them as my time, my opponent's time. No. The time belongs to both of you. You only have the choice how much not to let the opponent think.
Right.
To think. If you have 50 minutes versus 5, you both have 55 minutes in a sense.
Sure.
But you can limit him to 5 minutes. He can limit you to 50.
Right.
That's the definition of what you have with the clocks. It's not your time. It's your right to reduce his time.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I perceive the time here when it comes to the game of chess and the evaluation. Yeah. So it's very important to understand that you cannot take credit for winning a game. You can take credit for losing it, or
right.
for maintaining it.
Or for maintaining it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why holding a draw in a very tough position makes me far more proud than winning a winning position.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Especially when I'm playing a tough opponent for a lot of moves.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's also the reason why a guy like me is thrilled to have scored a draw against the 1900, rather than some tactical, beating that I might have put on a fellow 1300. I had no winning chances against the 1900, but I did hold that one draw, and that's a good day. If you go home, you feel good about that. Yeah. I know, I get that for sure.
Yeah.
But I see your point as a paradigm. As a paradigm shift, it's an incredible way of thinking it.
By the way, just reminded me that the most enjoyable period of my chess career, or one of the most enjoyable parts of my life, was when I was a beginner, and I made these gigantic steps every couple of months, playing and learning, and I saw real results. And I'm trying to recreate it in different fields with new skills all the time. But I'm kind of envious of the viewers, at least most of you who are low rated, who have the chance to invest a couple of hours and see real results in terms of rating and an actual thinking process with their chess, and enjoy it far more than I would. I would have to sit for many hours to see the slightest improvement. And my wins, my success, mostly depends on my opponents than my own, let's say, journey. I just have to sit there. You spoke about poker yesterday. Like in poker, it's just sitting there waiting for the chance. So in chess, you kind of also have to put pressure on the opponent. You have to sit and wait for the right moment.
You have the same experience in martial arts also. When you're working your way up the belt system and working your way toward black belt, there's this wonderful sense of achievement that happens every time you get, whether it's another stripe or whether it's an actual belt, or depending on the system that you use. But there is this sense when you hit black belt, and there are degrees of black belt. There's just still a sense of like, well, now what? And then the improvement required to get from black belt to next level black belt. I mean, some people it's just a time thing, but in a lot of places it's an actual substantive improvement in skill in the form of like winning tournaments, etc., etc. It is definitely a much different feeling. I agree with you. There's not that sense of I'm charging up the hill that you feel when you're when you're first starting out.
I fully agree.
Yeah, which is the thing that I'm enjoying the most
in chess.
In chess is having started recently, and now I'm sort of like starting to charge that hill, starting to feel, more confident. When you're losing consistently to 1500 and 1400 level players, and then suddenly 6 months pass and you're drawing an 1800 level player, you're like, okay, that's substantive, and you're right. And then for you, well, the draw is the most likely result in just about every game you play, and then it's like, well,
Yeah. So here I anticipate bishop takes f3, and g takes f3, and now king f8. And if c4, king e8, c5, king d7, Black is in time to put his king on c6. Oh, but
Anan says to get raided.
wait.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
you can keep it in mind, but there is something interesting, more interesting to me than words right now, to put it this way, is that there is another term in endgames which is called pants. I don't know how they call it in English. I know in Hebrew they use the word pants. So this position. Yes. So when two pawns are going from two different directions and the king cannot go to one because the other one will promote. That's how they call it in Hebrew. Maybe someone will help me with the English terminology. But these two pawns are blockaded by the black king. And what I calculated earlier, let me show you, because I want you to understand why Caruana is delving into such deep thought. Because, like, I imagined I will capture and play this not to have the doubled pawns. But what Carlsen just found out, I assume, is that while this looks losing for white from my perspective, because just to show the example, these two pawns are not reachable for the white king and you cannot stop them. And there's actually a funny little rule, it's called the square rule. You make a square, that's where the pawns will reach. So if the pawns were on e6 and a6 and there was no other pieces involved, then white king could be able to stop them both. Not to capture them, but to stop both of them. But here we cannot, because this is the general rule of thumb, which they, like, if you go after one, so let me just show the example, I will just be in time to be one move away. So the pawn will reach a1 without being captured. So this is called, I think, the rule of the square. And you can do the same if the pawn was on f6, like this, with the pawn on a6, and so on. And g7 with a7, etc. So here, this looks like a win for black, which is not a position from the game. But imagine what happens if you have an extra pawn on f3. I mean, instead of g2.
Oh, okay.
Maybe now you'll be in time to go with the king to capture the a pawn and win the game. I don't know. Maybe.
You say that has to be looked at.
Yeah, that's what Caruana is trying to
calculate right
now.
Wow. Ooh.
So
okay.
I'm not sure if that's the case, but we have the privilege to make moves on the board. This is the position from the game, as you can see in the orange little thingy here.
That's the current position.
Behind my ghost head. And if Caruana will capture on f3, which he just have and played king f8.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Ugh.
That he's so confident.
What's that?
What's amazing?
No, it's just, for me, it's amazing because, like I said, you know, the end game is an element of the game that, on the one hand, is so clear and calculable, and on the other hand, so easy to ignore and just remain bad at. In my life, I would have never imagined that bishop, that you would, you know, I would have never looked at that variation. I would have never considered it.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, you did.
Not for white. No, I didn't consider doubling the pawns.
Right.
That's just, I don't take credit for Carlsen's brilliance. So now f4 in this pawn structure is a little bit different. I can also play king g2. I don't know exactly how to judge the endgame. So let me be clear. By the way, we ignored the chat earlier, so maybe we can read the message you wanted to say.
Oh, no. Anan was just joking around and saying that, saying that in order to get Fide rated, you have to fight Chuck Norris in MMA. And yeah, to get rated by Fide, you have to beat Chuck Norris in MMA, and that's
why there are millions of chess players. Yeah. I challenge, by the way, everyone who are aware of Chuck Norris jokes to press on Google where is Chuck Norris, and then the button, I'm feeling lucky.
There's literally not one Chuck Norris joke that I haven't heard.
Have you heard this one?
What's that? I'm feeling lucky one? No, I've heard them all. I have all of them.
This is one by Google.
There's actually one of him sitting.
But stay on the stream.
He's actually one of him sitting across from a chessboard. White has all the pieces, and he just has the one pawn, and it says White to play and lose. White has the starting position, and across is just Chuck Norris and a pawn, and it says White to play and lose. So yeah, I mean, but you know, people love to joke around. A lot of people don't know this, but Chuck Norris, not only was he a legitimate martial artist in his time, he's kept up. I mean, he recently got a black belt in jiu-jitsu, despite the fact that what he's really famous for is, you know, being a kickboxer.
A kickboxer.
Yeah, Chuck Norris is no joke. I mean, he's a legitimate, as we say, he's a stud. He's the real deal. I mean, he's not a young man anymore. I mean, he's like, you know, but I'm just saying he was a serious guy. And then this is the last martial arts comment. Tyler Parks responds that qualified to begin learning starts at black belt, and I think that's 100% true. One of my senseis used to call it emptying the cup. Yeah. You get to black belt, and I think this is relevant to chess also. You and I spoke about this.
Being a GM.
Yeah, emptying the cup was a concept that Sensei used to talk about. Sensei Jaffe used to talk about where you reach black belt. Now pour everything out of the cup, clean out the cup, because now it's time to, you know, and yeah, so I think Tyler Parks is entirely right. But we should also clarify that judo has very strict and universal standards for black belt. If you're in competitive judo, where you get your black belt doesn't actually matter that much, in the sense that there's a federation that oversees the thing. That isn't true in all martial arts. And there are places that give away black belts like they're candy, and there are places where it's nearly impossible, like Yossi Sharif in Yerushalayim. He will not award a black belt in under 10 years. And so his version of a black belt isn't anything like some of the, I'm not going to name any specific martial art, but I'm saying anything like some martial arts where they just kind of give them away. And I do think that there's an element of that in chess as well, in the sense that there is at least some objective measure for Grandmaster, and there is a standard for Grandmaster, and yet the distance between Grandmaster and Grandmaster can be as vast as the distance between Grandmaster and me.
It's not a coincidence that I'm a ghost.
That you're a ghost?
See, my eyes have letters going through them.
Yeah, but that's just one or two comments about martial arts. But I think Tyler Parks is entirely right.
I feel like Raiden from Mortal Kombat, but not sure how many of you were born when this game was...
You weren't born when Mortal Kombat came out. I was a teenager. I played an actual... It was 2
years before I was born.
I played on an actual arcade version of Mortal Kombat. You weren't born
I
yet.
played it as 4 years old on Nintendo.
Oh, well, that's a Nintendo version, yeah.
Yeah. And, okay. And I remember a lot of things about that game.
Yeah. Anyway, so help me understand this this end game that I readily admit is way above my head.
So Carlsen has a choice between playing the line that I suggested earlier, ignoring these 2 pawns like a6, c5, etc. Like this and that.
Takes
and some random king moves, which here feels even worse. So like I wouldn't do that. It's not justifying what White did. What I would play after king f8 would be c4. That's what I wanted to say. Aiming to play c5, king d7, and now a6, and the difference. You can still go b6. Minor detail I forgot to mention. You can still go b6. I thought that he can go king c6. Yeah, but my point was that now this concept of pans that nobody corrected. So for maybe it doesn't exist in English, and we just
well, one person in the chat, one person in the chat mentioned overloading, but overloading is a very broad term that applies to a lot of tactics.
Yeah. So here you can see this square, so the king is in time. Yeah. So now a5. Sorry.
Yeah.
a5 is like that, and this is the square. The same principle. If the king can enter the square, then he's in time.
Right.
Even if he's on e5, he will be in time. Again, the square. The king has to enter, and he's in time to stop the pawn. So black cannot promote this pawn, but to promote the other pawn will take him a lot of time. So to create a passed pawn, I'm not even sure how he's gonna do that. So let's say king c6, king b4, h5, h3. I have no idea. No, that's a lie. I do. I can do this. And okay, that's just a very shallow line, but
just to demonstrate. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but let's do it a bit more precisely. So here, let's say I go back to let's say I go king c3. So in this position you go a5, I go king c4, e4. No, black is still winning here. So I don't see a way for white to punish black, and black also have the ability to play c6 in that position. So let's search for new ideas that I didn't look for before I start complaining for not seeing the candidate moves. c4 was played, king e8, a6 was played, b6 and c5. That's on the board.
Yeah.
So he's playing the same idea that I
the
had
same line, yeah.
with the doubled pawns, which I don't really understand. So let's try to search for new ideas. This is looking like a really funny idea at first sight.
Right. No, obviously you can't capture because the pawn passes. The rook can't get back in time.
But what you can do is go king c6 and catch the pawn.
Oh, wow.
So rook b6 fails. So Carlsen took on b6, and yeah, rook b6, just wanted to mention that it fails. A takes b6, and now, well, I think a7 is forced. I don't see any other option. And Carlsen is fighting for a draw. Rook a8, rook takes b6, rook a7, maybe king g2, I don't know exactly what. Maybe h4, trying to get some space. Earlier I mentioned the idea of e5 as a potential way to fight for an edge. So maybe f4 to prevent it. And then I said g5, takes, king g2, f5 or something like that. And that's more or less the critical position. And I would argue that it should be a draw. King g3. I mean, even if you take the d6 pawn, played king g2. Okay, on the board we have king g2. This move e5 does not scare Carlsen, and I'm not sure why. I guess he wants to play f4, and if takes, then maybe king f3, and if g5, then to start exchanging. But no, it's very scary, so I wouldn't consider taking this risk. So after e5, I'm not sure what's gonna happen, because king e6, rook d7, rook takes d6, and he did play e5. Well done, me.
So I have to ask you,
Carlsen is in slight, under slight pressure. I don't want to say slight. If I were black, I forgot how to address the position. If I were white against any player who can move pieces logically, I would fear that I have losing chances. However, I'm not strong enough to whether to determine if 4 versus 3 like this is an easy draw or not. It is scary for me. It is looking like black has a potential to win, and I don't see a way to avoid losing a pawn.
So this is actually exactly what I was going to ask you. How does a guy like myself learn to deal with these kinds of positions? Let's assume.
With which color?
Assume. No. I don't even mean necessarily how to play out this position. I mean, if you give me this position right now and ask me,
Rook b4.
Who's better, who's worse, and why? I'm not sure that I can answer the question. Obviously, now I can because you went through it. But my question is, how do I get to the point where I can't answer the question? Because I can't
What's
just
the
play
question again,
through.
sorry?
Okay, you present me this position and say, who's better in this position and why? I'm gonna before you told me everything. If you were to just give me this,
do you mean here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. You give me this position, and you say, okay, what is your objective analysis? Is black better? Is white better? Is it a draw? And why? And I'm not going to have an answer for you. That's the truth. I'm not going to have an answer for you. And my question is, what do I do between now, right, November 10th, and January 1st, so that I am closer to an answer than I was on November 10th?
That's a good question.
What would you suggest?
Okay, so try to imagine that I didn't tell you everything that you already know, and how would you address this position? Statically, who's better?
Statically, black.
So, what does white have to do?
You mean?
What does white have to do not to lose the game?
Well, yes. I'm not sure I understand the question.
If black is better statically,
right,
then he's playing for a win.
Right.
White doesn't want to lose.
Sure.
So he cannot play like back and forth and hold on when he's statically worse. So what can he do to avoid losing the game? In this situation, his only advantage is the passivity of the black rook on b8, which is temporary, because once the king arrives to c6, the rook is free.
So we're back to playing energetically, so to speak.
Yeah, we have to exert pressure here. How do we do so?
Well, the c-pawn looks to me the only way to do it. The king is not going to get there in time.
The a-pawn and the c-pawn.
Okay.
One has to cover to attack b7, the other one has to attack b6 because it can move up. So in this situation here, without the c-pawn you have no way to attack these pawns. So c4 followed by c5 followed by either c6 or a6. So c4, if you can start with c5 as well, but the point being that, like, if you start with c5 you still don't have time for c6, so it's more or less the same. And then this, and again, if you place king c6 you're gonna be faced with a very tough position, because these pawns will not be traded, and you will lose this pawn whether you want it or not. So now takes is forced. Rook takes loses. Yeah,
that was clear. We talked about that.
That's a very forcing line. And again, why a7? Because if I take on d6 and go back, then I will have a weakness on a6. I wish to exchange these two, and yeah, here I will play f4 probably, but then I guess there's f5 and some plan for black to get around and capture this pawn without losing his pawns. Or maybe just Carlsen missed it, but I don't know. I don't think that's possible. So king g2, and I guess I kind of answered your question. And after e5, rook b4, f5 was played, the rook went back to b6, and okay, white needs to protect this pawn. I guess his idea is that after king e6 he wants to go here and at least force the king to the last rank somehow, the back rank here, and then go rook e6 and rook back to g6. So black cannot keep all his pawns intact, so king e6 doesn't work as of now because of d7. So black has to find a good move, maybe g5, but then d7 also becomes a problem, maybe h5. So f5 doesn't feel accurate to me. Maybe he should just take the pawn. Why didn't he? He was afraid of f4. Maybe this is probably an easy draw if we exchange these pawns. 2 versus 3. 4 versus 3 is different than 3 versus 2. It's you have more winning chances, the more pawns you have.
Yeah, it's the
defender wants to exchange pawns. So rook b4.
We talked about this one. It's the reverse of pieces.
Yeah. Well, how is it with pieces?
No, because you were saying that the difference between 5 against 4 pieces or 4 against 3 pieces, 3 against 2 pieces, the more you trade, the more winning chances you have. So you want to the person with the fewer pieces wants to avoid the exchange of pieces, and yet when it comes to pawns, it's the person with on the defense who wants to exchange the pawns.
Yeah.
So as just as a simple rule of thumb.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So.
And then what? And then look at 100 positions like this, 1,000 positions like this, 50,000 positions like this, until you can start to get some sense of.
Start from 1.
Sure.
And just keep playing and analyzing these kind of positions. And.
But you would recommend that over, let's say, one of these like Alverbach type massive collections of theoretical endgames, and just keep, pounding them away. You're saying.
Yeah. I'm going to fix something here for a moment. Excuse me. I'm new to this Twitch thing. It's not the Twitch, it's called Streamlabs. So it doesn't update automatically. I have this thing called subscriber goal, and I don't know why it doesn't update like that. Right, let's see if this works now. I think it will be better. Yeah, now it's more objective. Okay, so back to the game. They made a move.
Yeah.
King, rook b6, king e6, d7 check, king takes d7. Just like we said.
We're exactly where we thought we would be.
Yeah.
And now we expect rook g6.
Forcing the black king backwards.
To the back rank. He wouldn't go toward the rook?
Yeah, but here rook e6 check. And then rook e7. I missed that. So white does not win a pawn. That's kind of a crucial detail. So he will go king e8 now.
Sure.
So king d7. White is thinking.
So rook g6, king e8. But are there any other options for white?
Other than what?
I'm saying rook
g6?
Rook g6 is what we're expecting, followed by king e8.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, and the reasons are obvious. It's a very simple tactic that even at the 1300 level you ought to be able to see. And then the question is, any other options? Leave the position where it is and bring the king forward?
I don't know. f4? But then it takes. I played rook b5 and king e6. Maybe now he will just check and go back. It makes sense to give a check. That's the position on the board. So the reason I'm saying check and back is because you go rook e7, then I go f4. And whatever you do, I will exchange one pawn. Because of the f5 pawn.
Yeah, it's clear.
So
because you take with check is your point. Yeah.
Also, if I don't. So here, after king e6, I predict check and check. Sorry. Rook b6. As black, I would probably go here and then go to g5 with the idea to go rook e7 and protect the f5 pawn. And then black's plan is generally connected with trying to push the pawns forward, grabbing space, and then trying to.
And the double
make
pawns
some
are
progress.
actually do turn out to be a big problem here.
Yeah, so let's see the position in the game. I'm refreshing. King on f6. So they did get to here, and I have to mention that they make one more move, they will get extra 50 minutes, which means that we will take a short break in this endgame. We will get back to you with some more attempts to properly diagnose it, more fails. But in the meantime, we'll probably will get our coffee or whatever.
Yeah, well, I'll drink another Excel.
Maybe I can play a game of Bullet. Don't do it at home either. To be honest, Joseph, you should study Morphe games, Michael Stevens says. There's a famous Michael Stevens on YouTube, which is the leader of the most popular educational channel.
Chess educational channel?
Yeah. No, not chess. Just in general.
Just educational?
It's called Vsauce, but
yeah.
I assume it's not the same Michael Stevens. He's just a fan. Yeah. But I'm a fan too. So I've watched all of the Vsauce videos.
Yeah, it's a piece of advice that you just can't go wrong with. It's definitely something I've heard from very, very strong players. Learn, take a look, spend some time. Guys my level, take a look at games that are so clear that you can understand them. The one problem with looking at today's games, or even games from the past 30 or 40 years, for guys like me, is that the intricacies involved are just hard for me to understand. They're hard for guys on my level to understand. And when you look at games from the pre-Steinitz era, it's pretty much tactics. Normal play and tactics. Normal moves, tactics. Like you keep saying. You can pretty much take the rules you've been telling me and see them played out in these games. So yeah, I don't think there's anybody on the planet who would dispute what Michael Stevens is saying.
He says he's the better man with the same name, so it's probably not a fan. He's a real person, as I suspected once. Magnus made a move. That's true. He gave a check. We predict King G5.
Right.
After which we will introduce you with a nice study by none other than the famous composer from Israel, Yochanan Afek.
Yochanan Afek. Yeah.
Yes.
Who's one of the most fascinating human beings you can ever have a conversation with.
Yeah.
If you ever have a chance to have a conversation with him about things that don't have to do with chess, besides being a brilliant composer,
a lot of moves.
He's a really, really fascinating man. Just absolutely brilliant human being.
Yeah. Whenever I was in Holland, which is where he lives,
right.
I would contact him and try to meet him up. And fortunately for me, he would agree.
Yeah.
And he claimed it was an honor to meet the grandmaster, even though it's
he's a very aristocratic. He's a very aristocratic individual. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But I felt exactly the opposite. Like it's an honor for me
to meet him.
Yeah, obviously.
When I met him, when he came for the Maccabiah, he said it's an honor to meet a language expert, because he has a thing for language. And I'm like, so I know I can relate to what you're saying, which is that he just has that very elegant and aristocratic thing about him. But the fact is, the honor is to have an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with him and hear his wisdom on so many things.
Yeah.
But as we said, having reached the time, we can't even take the break
yet. Just to finish the topic for now, is that Yochanan, I wanted to say that the previous championship, he watched almost all of my streams. I mean, he would send me messages after each stream with very friendly and kind criticism that helped me become better at what I do. And even provide me with positive feedback once I applied his advice. And I had literally no one else to do it for me. Before and since that event. So I really appreciate it. And it's rare to have such people in our life. So here after rook b6, king g5, rook b5, as we predicted, king f4, rook b4, e4. Black wants to make progress, takes, h3, rook a5. Maybe they will blitz out some more moves by the time we're back. In the meantime, you can watch the stream from another tab, not another website. Stay with us, and you have a nice study by Yochanan Afek, a relatively simple one, but nonetheless, a nice one. So good luck solving it. All right.
Okay, and we're back. And I just wanted to address one quick thing from the chat, and then we're going to go to the position. During the break, Masiola asked the exact question was, do you guys think Palestinians deserve their own state? One of the Masiola, I want to say first of all that I think it's a serious question, and I'm not trying to avoid it or diminish it in any way. But the decision that we made when we planned these broadcasts was that we would avoid any political discussions, because what we want to do is celebrate the apolitical nature of chess and get to a point where everyone everywhere in the world is playing chess against everyone else everywhere in the world, and putting aside for a moment their personal and political and religious differences. And I think that chess lends itself to that, maybe even more than any other game, because in martial arts you gotta have to be a certain kind of person, you have to be a certain kind of athlete, etc., etc. And so what I will say is, on any occasion that I am sat across the board from a Palestinian, I will absolutely shake his hand, wish him good game, and enjoy a great game of chess. And we hope that we can help promote that feeling, whether it's Israelis and Palestinians, or Americans and Trump supporters and Trump not supporters, or whatever the case may be. And with that, we're going to go back and provide the solution to the... Wait a minute. They agreed to a draw.
They agreed to a draw.
Okay, so the draw has been agreed to. I know you guys definitely want to listen to the study that we put on the board, so maybe you can just walk us quickly through this, and then we'll look at the study.
Okay, so in the actual game, we went to the break after the move e4 and h3. So in these 5 minutes or so, black played rook a5, rook b7, rook g5 checking f1, with a silly trap that some of us may fall into, that after king f3, white is checkmating black with rook f7.
I would fall for that. Yeah.
But apart from that, rook g6, rook b4, rook g5, rook b7, rook g6, rook b4, and the draw was agreed. There is no way for each side to make progress, especially for black. I mean, especially for white, but
for white, yeah.
But black is the one that seeks progress, and he is the relevant one in this regard. And well,
would you say this qualifies as a classic sort of 3 against 2 is probably going to be a draw situation?
Yeah.
Because 3 against 2, I mean, when I first learned 3 against 2, it was literally like 3 against 2 like this, not spread out over the But you're saying this is still 3 against 2, and there's really no way with correct play that.
So before people will leave the stream, let's go back to the position real quick. So this is a study by Yochanan Afek and why to play and draw. And I'm not sure if I remember the solution myself, but let me try. So I solved it myself once. f7 is the first move. It's not so difficult. The point is to distract the king from the d file, so that I can try to promote king f7 and d7. And now black cannot prevent me from promoting, at least at the cost of a rook. But what he can do is give a check, then another check, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, and then go with the rook all the way back to h2, followed by rook a to d2. And what that does is achieve a double threat to exchange the rook and rook h1 mate. And Joseph, do you have a guess what's the only move here not to lose? And that's, by the way, the specialty of Yochanan Afek.
The only move here to not lose? Please don't tell me it's promoting to a knight with check.
Yochanan is famous for his under promotions. And I mean, he does a lot of things that are very, very good in the composing field. But
he always challenges you to think outside the box.
Exactly. Yeah. So d8 knight, and now you're forced to take on d2, otherwise you lose the game.
Sure.
And now let me ask you, where do you put the knight?
Where do I put the knight?
Yeah, you have 2 squares, right?
I would put the knight on B7.
Okay, what happens after knight b7? Let me highlight it in arrows. What can you do in this case?
I don't understand your question.
What can black do to win the game? How can he control the knight?
Can he? I mean, I obviously, if he can, then I genuinely missed it, obviously, so.
Yeah, but now try to find it. It's funny, we have more viewers because everyone leaves the other streams and try to solve the position. So, how would you trap the knight? He has 2 places to go, 2 squares on the d file and 2 squares on the 5th rank. The d file is already covered. How do you cover these 2 places?
Yeah, oh, right, rook d5.
Rook d5. King moves. King e7 covers these 2. And no matter what you do, I'll go rook b5 and capture the knight. Yeah? So knight b7 loses.
Yeah.
So what are we left with?
Knight c6.
Knight c6. And now, rook d6. Where do you go? 4 different options that don't lose the knight in one move. And Yohanan is very good with the nuances.
Yeah, the problem is that the knight b4 doesn't work because I get pinned.
Yeah. Knight b4 you get pinned. That's correct. What else? Knight b8 you get
Same
checked.
thing.
Okay.
And all that leaves me is a7 and a5. I guess I would go to a5 just to be close. I mean, I'm just absolutely the only thing I'm trying to do here is keep the, the knight closer to the center. I don't see
and to the king also.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. So knight here, check, and now where do you go with the king?
Toward the center. King
Where?
c2.
That's the only move. King c1 loses to rook b5 followed by rook c5.
Same issue. Okay.
Yeah, king c2 and now this, and I'm in time to protect the knight. If knight a7 I will also lose because of rook a6. Knight b5 is the same pin, and now the king comes to
He's going to get trapped again. Yeah.
So this is the solution to the study. And I will challenge whoever is still with us to solve another riddle that I will introduce you to during the break tomorrow as well. But check this out.
Oh yeah, this is great. I actually also got this from Yochanan Afek. He sent this to me as just a fun little thing. Can you identify 25 out of the 36 legendary chess players that are here?
Yeah. And okay, I kind of use the same phrase, not to say that if you want to belong to this chess group on Facebook, but if you want to belong to this community, become a true member of this channel's community, please try to identify 25 of the 36 legendary chess players in the pictures. I have to say that I almost failed. I was on the verge. I think I found like 26, but I imagined I would know more than just the amount, but some of them are not familiar to me face-wise, and okay, of course I checked it afterwards, but I'll provide solutions soon enough, maybe after tomorrow's break. So try it out, and in the meantime we'll read some chess messages and think about how to address them, and then we will finish the stream.
Okay, yeah, let's take a look through these messages and see if there's anything here. For anybody who's just tuned in to see what the final result was, the final result was a second draw. So there will not be a game tomorrow. Not because there was a draw, there just isn't a game tomorrow. And the next game, Fabiano comes back with the white pieces.
Yeah, on Sunday.
On Sunday.
No. On Monday. This is Saturday, right?
Mm-hmm.
On Monday is the next game.
Now, I am a little bit confused about one thing. How many pictures are there on this thing?
36.
Are there?
6 times 6.
נראה לי 30.
So maybe I'm missing some.
We might have accidentally cropped out some of them. I remember it being 36, but I don't think.
I didn't even notice.
I also remember because I also remember that one of the pictures wasn't even a picture. It was like a.
So let me.
It was like a
You're there.
There we go. Because I remember that.
I have more room for my text now. Let's see.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, but the bottom one is the easiest, even though the second, the two on the left are not that easy. At least.
Somebody wants to challenge me. Fabricio Pessoa says, "I'm 1278. I would like to challenge this 1330." Why would you waste your time playing me? I don't learn anything by playing me. You're just gonna crush me and smash me over the head with your rooks, and then I'm gonna cry and. And you're going to feel proud of yourself. You challenge him. No, in all seriousness, if you're ever in Israel and you want to sit down over the board, I'm more than happy to do that. I don't do a lot of online chess just because I really prefer real, so to speak, over the board chess. And the rest of the time I just try to do studying. But
one person recognized Judith Polgar because he sees one woman.
Well, just because it's a woman doesn't mean it's Judith Polgar.
Some people recognize Magnus.
That's good. It's good if you recognize Magnus.
It's kind of funny that Fabi is not in the picture.
Yeah.
But he will be in the next one, I hope.
What would you say is the most recognizable?
Mikhail Tal, someone recognized. That's correct. I
would say the most recognizable face has to be Kasparov's. I mean, maybe that's just because, I don't know. To me, that's the most recognizable face.
Someone recognized Botvinnik.
Somebody mentioned Morphy, Kramnik, Anand, Carlsen.
Gligorich, that's one of them. Morphy, Kramnik, Anand.
Okay, props to anybody who recognized Gligoric, because that's not as easy.
I don't even remember which one it is.
Mikhail Meimer, listen to this. Mikhail Meimer says, C6 is Alon.
Yeah.
That's true.
C6 is Alekhine, yeah. That's true. Which proves that Caro-Kann is actually not necessarily C6 and D5. Maybe it should be called the Alekhine defense. I kind of feel bad for Alekhine that he's such a great player and he got the shittiest opening of them all.
That's right.
Named after him when he played so many good games and openings throughout his career. Yeah, people get Anand, Carlsen, Kasparov, Fischer, Polgar.
Yeah, recent. The more recent ones are obviously easier.
Capablanca, Botvinnik, Lasker, Spassky, Mikhail Tal.
Fischer's.
But if you recognize Fischer, you might as well spell him correctly with a C.
Yeah. Fischer.
All right. So people here.
Nathan FK2 says I recognize Uwe too on the third row.
Yeah, Max Oive. That's correct.
Max Oive.
Frank Marshall.
Oive.
Frank Marshall is the one that
Steinitz on E5.
I had trouble with. Karpov, Steinitz on E5. That's actually correct.
That's exactly right.
That's so right. And the F1 guy. Let me guess who he is. The F1 guy.
Yeah, the F1 guy.
Let's change the title of the video. Like Fabiano Caruana versus the F1 guy. Carlson. Yes, Mislov is there too. Need more women. I couldn't agree more.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, Hou Yifan deserves to be on this list.
Yeah, Lasker. That's correct. So yeah, keep checking. You can write in the comments what you think, and I'll let you try more during the break before I review all the answers. And yeah, let's go back to the final position.
Do a quick recap or whatever.
Yeah. So we were right here. Well, there is no need for a recap. I think there will be like at least 10 different videos by the main YouTube channels who will like analyze with and without engines and provide all the different insights into the game. But let's just look at it quickly, just for fun. I like to do it when I finish watching a game, like to get this kind of sense of how the game was played. Looks like White had a serious initiative and then Black equalized with ease. And then suddenly Black was better, but Carlsen is too strong.
That's the quick. That's the quick wrap up. The other guy had an advantage, but Carlsen is too strong. I'm gonna go home and Anna's gonna ask me, and she's say, "How'd the game go?" I said, "Well, the other guy had an advantage, but Carlsen was too strong."
Yeah, Caruana is like finishing the match losing. Like, what's your summary? Yeah, Carlsen is too strong. I was close, but that's the way. Some positions you just can't compete with him. That's something he actually said.
Are we likely to see an entire event of this sort? Is that your prediction? That we're going to see 10 more games like this, followed by an attempt by Carlsen?
I seriously hope not. I predict that tomorrow Caruana will try to put some more pressure, but
blast out with C4.
No, I think he will continue with E4. He will improve on his previous play, and I think Carlsen will change his opening for some reason. I think Carlsen fears opening prep, and he will shift his openings from game to game, but I might be wrong. If we'll see the same opening, then maybe he will try to...
Well, if we see the same opening, he's obviously going to have to make some adjustments.
Yeah. And if it's okay for black, then it will make me doubt my chess understanding, because I feel like white is better in this opening from round one.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
So I predict that Caruana will go back to E4, and that Carlsen will try his best to... avoid any serious trouble. I predict most likely that he will change his opening. Okay, so anyone of the commentators has something to add?
No. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for watching, and that I had a great time, as usual. And we will, of course, be here with the next game on Monday night. And we're going to continue this format where we have the teacher and the student, and we tried to simultaneously do live coverage as well as a lesson, sort of like a long-term masterclass with Tal Baron. And on that note, we'll say goodnight and see everybody on Monday.
Before that, I'll just mention that I want to thank to the people who subscribed and liked my Facebook page that I was implying during these breaks. And to also have a very special thank you to my future wife, for not having met me yet, and thus allowing me to stay here up so long and enjoy this boring game.
Okay.
So see you all in the next round, and thank you very much.
All right. Good night, everybody.